morning, everybody. It is 7 o'clock and you are very welcome to join us on The Breakfast Show here on Sky. Rescue workers are braving freezing temperatures of minus 13 degrees to search for survivors of an earthquake in northwest China. More than 100 people are known to have died so far. And after weeks of seismic activity, a volcano has erupted in Iceland. We'll bring you the very latest. It's Tuesday, the 19th of December. China's president has called for an all-out search and rescue effort to save as many lives as possible. In Iceland, jets of lava from a volcano lit up the night sky. More than 4,000 people have been moved to safety so far. Hamas has released a new video showing 3 elderly male hostages. Their families say time's running out.
The Israeli government has criticised the video, describing it as cruel towards elderly and innocent civilians.
TV legend Esther Ransom says she could end her life at the Swiss clinic Dignitas to spare her family from seeing her suffer a painful death from lung cancer. English Heritage reveals Christmas carols are being sung to the wrong tune. To be fair, you can't recognise any tune when I'm singing. The ladies are here this morning. Good morning, ladies. You're talking about Iceland?
Good morning. Yeah, a huge volcanic eruption overnight. It's meant that a fishing village has been evacuated, so worrying times for people there. OK, and the magnificent Alistair Darling's funeral today?
A memorial service will be held for Alistair Darling today in Edinburgh at 11 o'clock this morning. The former Chancellor of the Exchequer, who died at the end of last month.
He did. We'll see both a bit later, ladies. Thanks very much indeed. Let's tell you about what's happening in China. At least 116 people have been killed in an earthquake in northwest China. The earthquake in the province of Gansu happened just before midnight. Jixing County was the worst hit area. Search teams are working in freezing temperatures of below minus 13 degrees. Tom Cheshire has more.
In China's cold and mountainous northwest, the devastation of this earthquake is starting to become clear. Buildings are now piles of rubble. Emergency services scrambled to find survivors and were making sense of the scale of the disaster.
At 23:59 on December 18, 2023, an earthquake of 6.2 magnitude happened in Jixing County, Linsha Prefecture. The depth of focus of the earthquake is 10 kilometres.
People are now struggling with no power or water. Roads have been destroyed, making it more difficult for rescue workers to reach the areas most in need. China's state broadcaster has reported that President Xi Jinping has called for an all-out search and rescue effort, and 5,000 rescue workers have been sent to the region. In sub-zero temperatures, survivors have been forced to make fires outside as they struggle to stay warm. The first trickle of aid has made its way to the area, and Taiwan's president has offered their support in the disaster recovery. That recovery looks set to take some time. Tom Cheshire, Sky News.
And of course, more on that throughout the course of the morning. Also breaking news overnight. What's happening in Iceland? This is the volcano that we've been waiting, the eruption we've been waiting a month or so for?
Yeah, that's right. Seismic activity around this particular volcano towards the southwest peninsula of Iceland began erupting starting around late October. And overnight, 10:30 last night, we finally had this eruption. It's really different.
These are live pictures.
These are live
pictures. Pretty spectacular stuff.
It is, and it seems to be growing in size. It's not the traditional volcanic blast that people might be used to, where it's coming out of a volcanic peak. This is, as you can see on your screen, a large crack which is emitting and fountaining a huge amount of molten rock, which is now spewing downhill. It's worrying times for people, particularly in one fishing village, which is about 2 miles away from here, a village called Grindavik. This was the fishing town that was evacuated about a month ago, and we reported from there as people were evacuated from their homes, the first time in 50 years that they've had anything like this for that particular town.
Geographically, just so that if people have been to Iceland, it's quite close to the Blue Lagoon. Lagoon, isn't it?
Popular tourist attraction.
Yeah.
That only reopened on Sunday, so it's been shut for quite a while. As you say, the Blue Lagoon, very close by, as is the airport.
Yes.
At the moment, Iceland's foreign minister says that there are no disruption to flights in and out of Iceland. But of course, people will remember the huge ash cloud back in 2010, which grounded thousands.
Now, for a bonus point, can you remember the name or pronounce the name of the volcano?
I'll give it a go. I'm so sorry to our Icelandic viewers if I get it wrong, but I think it's Eyjafjallajökull.
Very good. And this was back in 2010?
Yeah, this
11.
is, yeah, and people will remember, you know, thousands of flights across Europe grounded for about a week or so. At the moment, it looks as though scientists are saying, it's early days, but that this particular eruption is more lava rather than ash cloud. But of course, it's early days, even though it's happened almost 10 hours ago now.
Yeah, I remember that, actually. The Obamas had to stay in the UK for several days because they couldn't take off because all of the planes in Europe were grounded for about a week, I think. But this is what's happening right now. Now, this, as you say, is more official than a whatever you called it. How did you describe it?
A volcanic blast from a particular peak.
Oh, very good. When this gets to the sea, that causes all sorts of pollution, doesn't it?
Yeah, because the worrying trend is that if the lava meets the sea, that's when you get the ash. But it looks as though, and it's good news for people in that particular fishing town, that it's going more north. So the worry is if that crack starts to seep further south, that's when it could start to reach the sea, and that's where the worry around disruption will start to build. But the worrying part is, I suppose, is that the crack is still growing, and from that you're getting that spewing molten rock that's seeping downhill.
So people are just tuning our way. What's happening?
So this is a volcanic eruption that happened at 10:30 last night in Iceland, towards the southwest of the country. At the moment, flights aren't disrupted by it, but as people can see on their screens, that sky is lit up orange by this growing fissure in the rock, and that molten rock is continuing to fountain from it.
British Airways flight due to go just after 8 o'clock this morning. Our understanding is that it's still flying at this stage, but you really do need to check with your airline if you're planning to go to Iceland for Christmas. It's a beautiful part of the world. Have you been?
Stunning, yeah, I was lucky enough to go and went to the Blue Lagoon.
Yeah,
so
that's pretty cool
that's
as well.
been shut for quite
Yeah, but 10:30 last night, they're on the same timeline as us, I think I'm right in saying, and there was this crack that widened, and as a result, we've seen all this volcanic molten lava. So we'll have to wait and see what happens going forward. Thanks very much for now. Thank you. Looking at the other headlines on the programme for you this morning, more than 300 people have been rescued from floodwaters in Australia. The military there has been sent to help badly hit communities in the far north of Queensland. This follows ex-tropical cyclone Jasper, which left people without access to power, food and drinking water, as well as warnings of crocodiles swimming through streets. Not sure what that picture was for, but trust me, we've seen those crocodiles. Now, a storm has injured at least 15 people at a festival in Argentina. Parts of the stage at the Fiesta Brecht Festival in Buenos Aires were blown apart by winds of more than 90 miles an hour. And there are calls for urgent reforms to NHS dentistry, with researchers warning if it's at its most perilous point in its 75-year history. The Nuffield Trust found many areas no longer have NHS dentists, and budgets have fallen by more than £500 million in the past 8 years. We'll have more on that with Darren Jones for Labour in the next hour here on Sky News Breakfast. Meantime, the TV legend Dame Esther Rantzen has called for a vote on the legality of assisted dying after announcing that she has joined Dignitas. Assisting in someone else's death is illegal in the UK and punishable by up to 14 years in jail. The former That's Life presenter revealed in January that she'd been diagnosed with lung cancer and has now said she doesn't want her family to see her suffer. She said in an interview with the BBC, "I don't want their last memories of me to be painful, because if you watch someone you love having a bad death, that memory obliterates all the happy times, and I don't want that to happen." Hamas has released a new video showing 3 elderly male hostages, the kibbutz where they lived before they were kidnapped on October the 7th, saying time is running out. Let's get more, should we? Alistair standing by. These gentlemen in their 70s and 80s.
Yeah, I think firstly we've got to consider why Hamas have released this. And I think it is an attempt to put more pressure on the Israeli government to come to another hostage release deal. Hamas, despite being under immense amount of military pressure over the last couple of months in Gaza, will be aware, I'm sure, of the domestic situation here in Israel, where there is that pressure on the Israeli government to do more to get more hostages released. And Hamas have given a number of indications that they would be willing to enter a hostage deal. No doubt, of course, because they are under such military pressure. They probably want to get to a stage where they can have another break from the fighting. The other thing to note from the video is who is in it. 3 elderly men, and I think that is Hamas giving a sign that they would be willing to release people in that category. But when we sort of talk about categories of prisoners, Israel is still saying that there are at least 19 women and 2 children that they know of being held in Gaza, and they should be the priority. But by showing old men on the video like this, it's Hamas saying, we have them and we are potentially willing to release them. Although Hamas do say that there will need to be a complete ceasefire and the withdrawal of troops for any hostage release to happen. So where are we? How close are we to a new deal? Well, things have been moving in the last few days. The Qatari Prime Minister, the Qataris, of course, as a reminder, are crucial to this because they have a direct line to Hamas. He met with the head of the Mossad last Friday. And then we think yesterday, the 2 of them met together again in Warsaw with the head of the CIA, Bill Burns. And so the bringing together of senior officials like this is a positive sign, although the Americans do caution that a deal is not imminent.
OK, for now, thank you. Thanks a lot. As poor people, obviously, there's a video. We're not showing you a video. We don't show videos of people being recorded under duress. The Royal Navy is joining a US-led task force to protect ships in the Red Sea, which have been attacked by Houthi rebels from Yemen. Let's get more with Mark.
From the bridge of the USS Carney, this is what protecting one of the world's busiest shipping lanes looks like at the moment. The American destroyer intercepting missiles from Yemeni rebels who are targeting commercial ships in the Red Sea. The US Defense Secretary, on a visit to Israel, hinted at an announcement which would come soon after.
These attacks are reckless, dangerous, and they violate international law. And so we're taking action to build an international coalition to address this threat.
In a statement confirming the details of the coalition, he said, "I am announcing the establishment of Operation Prosperity Guardian, an important new multinational security initiative. The recent escalation in reckless Houthi attacks originating from Yemen threatens the free flow of commerce, endangers innocent mariners. This is an international challenge that demands collective action." Last month, this extraordinary video produced by the Houthi group was designed to show their sophistication, but also their desire to piggyback the Palestinian cause, the Palestinian flag alongside their own on the back of the helicopter. They boarded and seized a commercial ship. This represents an unprecedented threat to commerce passing through here, and it is having an impact. BP has now stopped transporting oil via the Suez Canal, and one of the world's biggest shipping companies has called for the greater international protection that is now being pledged.
After we had an attack on one of our container ships last Friday morning in the Red Sea, we decided to pause our ships and no longer send ships through the canal. We are now planning for the next 2 to 3 weeks. Then we will have an assessment again.
The attacks are persisting despite the presence already of American and British naval forces. The British say HMS Diamond, which has only just arrived in the region, has already intercepted Houthi missiles. Clearly, all of this already indicates a new economic front in this Middle East war, with supply line issues and potential global ramifications there. But much more than that, a military coalition of so many different countries, including the UK, the US, France, Spain, the Netherlands and others. This is a new military front with the potential of military escalation, intentional or otherwise. The presence of warships in the region will certainly heighten tensions. Regional foes are posturing, seeking advantages, exploiting weaknesses. And this won't encourage commercial ships back anytime soon. Mark Stone, Sky News in Washington.
In other news, a verdict is expected later today in the case of Monique Oliver, the French woman on trial for the murder of the British student Joanna Parish back in 1990. Let's get more, should we? Adam is standing by for us this morning in Nanterre. Hi, Adam. Tell us more.
Yeah, morning, Kay. This is a horrendous case involving Monique Olivier, the wife of one of the most notorious serial killers in French history, a man called Michel Fourniret. Now, he was convicted of killing 8 people, but died a couple of years ago before he could stand trial in these 3 further cases, which is 2 French victims, Estelle Mouzin, who was just 9 years old, and Marie-Angèle Dumec, who was 18, but also Joanna Parish. Now, Joanna was just coming up to her 20th birthday. She was a student working here in France when she arranged to meet somebody in order to give English lessons. Well, that turned out to be Fourniret, who killed her. But throughout this killing spree that Fourniret carried out, Monique Olivier was his accomplice, luring victims, women, girls, into a vehicle and then effectively sitting there while Fourniret raped them, beat them, and then ultimately killed them, even at one point using her infant child as part of a lure. So she is already in prison. She's already serving life. In fact, she's serving a life term and then a further 20 years. The prosecution here has asked for her to be given another life term. The Parish family, her parents, her brother, and her then boyfriend are all going to be in court later today to hear the verdict.
Thanks very much indeed. Thank you. Kay Burley, Minister of State for Housing, is with us this morning. It's good to see you. Thanks very much indeed. I know you are here to talk about housing today. First of all, yesterday Sky News revealed nearly 400,000 kids in England will be waking up homeless this Christmas. What are you going to do about it?
So we absolutely have to do things about it. There's been a substantial amount of money that's gone in already. We need to build more homes, which is what we're trying to do, what we're going to talk about today, hopefully. But there's a lot of work going on within the department and with my colleagues to try and make sure that people have roofs over their head, they get out of B&Bs as quickly as possible, and that we're finding people for houses for the long term. Yeah, some kids supposed to be there for 6 weeks emergency accommodation, there for 6 months or longer. What can be done? Yeah. Does this all date back to Margaret Thatcher selling off council houses in the 70s and 80s? No, I think it dates to a particular issue at the moment. We have some really challenging economic circumstances which we're trying to work through. The government is trying to step in where we can to help families. The absolute basic point is that people need roofs over their heads when they're going through difficult times. We're doing that. And then we need to get people into longer term housing as quickly as we're able to do that. But 400,000 is not an acceptable number, is it? It's not, and we're trying to work to move it down as quickly as we possibly can. So tell me how. Through building more houses, through making sure when houses are built that more affordable houses are part of the package, making sure more houses for rent are part of the package, making sure more affordable houses are part of the package, and that over time increases the supply, which means people who are in temporary accommodation right now can move into longer-term housing. However, I've been reading that planning permissions for new homes have fallen to a record low. Well, they have reduced this year. That's because the number of planning applications has gone lower this year because of the economic circumstances. But if you look over a longer period of time, there is a substantial amount of planning applications that have gone in, substantial amount of approvals that have been made, and a lot of houses that could still be built with those approvals that have been made. I mean, I've gone through the planning permission challenges, hurdles of late, and it's not easy. There are challenges. I mean, that is... What can the government do to help? That is all about balancing both wanting to make sure more houses are built as part of the long-term plan for housing, but that they're built in the right places, that existing properties are expanded in a way which works for communities. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to put more capacity into the system. So we've already announced millions of pounds for additional planners, for additional skills. And then more broadly in the planning system, we've just come out with an action plan for infrastructure planning, for example, which speeds up how nuclear power stations are built, how roads are built, how wind farms are built. So there's a lot of work the government's doing to try and speed up as well. I remember donkeys years ago, 2005, interviewing David Cameron when he was just a boy, and he was talking about housing then. You've never hit your targets. We still have a way to go in terms of hitting the 300,000, but we have made substantial progress towards it. We've built the best part of 2.5 million houses over the past 13 years. I think in terms of the highest number of houses built per year, that's been in the last 4 years or so. We're on track
Still
to
short
build.
of your targets, though.
But we need to get there, and we've had economic challenges. You know, part of government is never perfect. We're making progress. We've increased the rate of house building from in the hundreds of thousands in 2010, 2011, 2012 to in the 200s of thousands. The last one is 240,000 last year. So there's real progress, but no doubt more to do.
And is that going to go back to my original question? That's going to help these kids, is it? How's that going to help them?
Yeah, because what that part of that 240,000 homes, or the 230-odd thousand homes the year before, includes affordable homes, homes for rent, social rent, etc. And that's all part of trying to bring houses both for owner occupation and for those who need through rent or through affordable housing as well.
Talk to me about Israel. Your colleague Alicia Kearns has said Israel has gone beyond self-defence in the Gaza war. Do you agree with her?
No.
Why not?
Because I have great respect for Alicia. She's a very, very senior member of the party and chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee. But I mean, politics is, sometimes we take different views, and I take a different view to Alicia on the Israel-Gaza issue. Where I do agree with Alicia is that we want to see a ceasefire as quickly as possible. It's got to be a ceasefire that works. It's got to recognise that Israel has the right to defend itself against terrorist organisations killing 1,200 of its own citizens. It's an extremely complicated situation. We all want it to finish as quickly as possible, but we all recognise there is nuance and difficulty in getting there.
We had the main man for the Catholic Church in England sat where you were this time yesterday, and he said that the Israeli Defence Force, as far as he was concerned, had killed churchgoers.
Look, I didn't see that. But if you stand back and say, where are we in terms of Israel, Gaza? We have one side, Israel, which is trying to defend itself against people just being murdered or dragged and taken hostages away. We have a terrible situation in Gaza that we want to try and end as quickly as possible. But the way to do that, where it could stop right now, is Hamas laid down their weapons. If they got out from behind the hospitals that they're shielding in, if they stop using their civilian population as human shields, that's the way to stop it right now. And if Hamas are refusing to do that, Israel has a right to defend themselves against an organisation that says it will come back time and time and time again and just kill people because they're Jewish.
In the meantime, we're told that Gaza's on the verge of famine.
And that's why we want to open up further routes. I understand another route has been opened up in the last couple of days or so. That's really good progress.
It's not actually a route. The stuff is checked there, but it still has to come through Rafah.
Another border crossing of it. But you are right, there is much more to do in terms of supporting the civilian population. We're trying to do that. The United Kingdom is urging that to happen, and we just all hope we can get to a situation which allows the challenges to stop as quickly as possible.
And a ceasefire would help that.
Well, it would, but it has to be a ceasefire that works. It has to be a sustainable ceasefire. And at the moment, Hamas are not good faith actors. They are not coming forward, and they're hiding behind their civilian populations. They can stop this right now.
Talk to me about a story that's on the front page of many of the papers today. Dame Esther Ranson, part of my childhood. She has stage 4 lung cancer. She's joined Dignitas, an assisted dying clinic, as you know, in Zurich. Is it right that those who are terminally ill need to go to a place like Dignitas rather than be able to be in their final days here in the UK? Also, if her family go with her, they face up to 14 years in jail.
It's a very difficult situation. This is one of those few things in politics where there isn't a whip, where there isn't something that the Labour
What would
Party
you
or
like
the
to see
Conservatives...
happen then?
I find it really difficult on a personal level. I've been to see people who are terminally ill in my constituency who both strongly want the right for assisted dying and people who are very strongly anti that, who say that even though this is a very difficult situation, even though that pain can be involved at times, they don't want that to happen. And so there isn't a vote at the moment, but I want to talk through with my constituents about that. I think sometimes...
What do you feel personally?
I struggle with it. I both want to respond to the absolute understandable things that people like Esther Ranson have said, also part of my childhood as well, but also recognising that government has to... There's no perfection in any policy, and we have to be very, very careful about this. And I'm personally quite reticent, but I want to work through that at the time when it happens. I don't think there is a proposal for a plan to come forward.
There's some work going on in the Isle of Man at the moment, but you're right, not on the mainland as it stands. But do you think if her family go with her to hold her hand in her dying breath, that they should face 14 years in jail?
I think we should look at all of that. I just really struggle with this on a personal level. I know lots of colleagues do as well. I think it needs to be. I think we need to go through it at the point when it's looked at by Parliament again. We'll all have the opportunity to go through it. We'll all have the opportunity to talk in places like this. It will be a big discussion and debate that the country has. But there are no absolutes here. It's all about trying to find the right balance, but also recognising human life is very sacred and we should be very careful.
OK, good to see you. Thanks for joining us. Much appreciated. Thank you. Latest from Iceland overnight. Have a quick look at these images. Here we go. About 10:30 last night, this is what happened. Can we have a look? There we go. There we go. These are live pictures that you can see, and it was a volcano that erupted. It had been threatening to do so for about a month or thereabouts. It's a 2-mile fissure that's now opened, and these are images from last night. Pretty spectacular, are they? Most of the area near to the airport had already been evacuated, including the very popular Blue Lagoon. So it is thought that casualties will be to a minimum, but nevertheless, pretty spectacular images overnight. We'll keep an eye on that for you. There's the Blue Lagoon. Many of you have been, I'm sure. We'll update you as soon as we can. Meantime, Gurpreet's here. The fantastic, wonderful Alistair Darling, credited with saving the economy in the early 2000s, 2008, I think. It's a service today for him.
Yeah, so a memorial service is going to be taking place at St Mary's Episcopal Cathedral in Edinburgh, where Alistair Darling served as an MP from 1987 to 2015. A private cremation took place yesterday with his close family. Today, it's a memorial service that will be attended by a number of political figures, including former colleagues, those in attendance, Sir Tony Blair, Gordon Brown, the current Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, as well as Rachel Reeves, the Shadow Chancellor. Darling's children, Anna and Callum, will be reading eulogies, as well as his former friend and Labour Minister, Brian Wilson. So there'll be a strong Labour presence today, but don't be surprised if you see figures from very different political backgrounds, because Alistair Darling was a politician who commanded respect from people, politicians of all stripes. And that was something that was very palpable after he died. When he passed away, there were tributes from the likes of David Cameron, Jeremy Hunt, George Osborne, all paying their respects to him. I think, as you said, he was best known for how he handled the financial crisis after receiving that call in October 2008 from the Royal Bank of Scotland saying that he had run out of money. He put together a rescue package with the Bank of England and the Treasury. That was really his high spell as Chancellor. He was indelibly marked by it, but he was known for other things as well, such as the Better Together campaign to defend the Union. So many achievements over a very long career, but I expect people will have very private reflections today.
I'm sure, yeah. He once spent hundreds of pounds, I think, on pizza so that all of the staff all stayed all weekend so they could try and sort out the banking crisis. And when the banks thought that, they rang up and thought, oh, yeah, we'll just have what we want. He went, hold me coat. He was a sensational man. Once came to mind for Christmas. Fantastic man. Thank you very much. Thank you. Quick look at the weather.
Warm memories wherever you go. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Next few days, mostly unsettled, mild. There'll be some colder spells, mainly for northern parts. Quite chilly in the windy north now, still mild in the south, though. Earlier rain over Wales and the southern half of England will become largely confined to the southeast. That's by midday. Most places will then be dry with good sunny spells, but there'll be showers in the north and also the west.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Here's a question for you. Do you recognise this festive tune? Well, that's while shepherds watch their flock by night, sung to what English Heritage say is the correct tune. Researchers say that many of our favourite carols were standardised during the 19th century and their original music was lost. We'll be talking about that with somebody from English Heritage later on the show. And will you be having carrots with your Christmas dinner? If not, you should be. They might not help you see in the dark, who says, but scientists say they can help us avoid cancer. A study by Newcastle University found eating 5 servings of the vegetable a week, that's a lot, reduces the chance of developing the disease by as much as 20%. What better excuse do you need to pile on the trimmings this Christmas? Still to come, could the eruption in Iceland shut down European airspace? We'll speak to a volcanologist. And what will teachers make over the government's new guidance on trans children? We'll speak to the head of one of the UK's biggest school trusts. Again, everybody, you're just waking up to the news that a volcano has finally erupted near to the airport in Iceland. It had been sort of threatening to for the last month or so, and that is exactly what's happened near the town of Grindavik. As we look at the pictures, let me bring in actually from the US, but actually lives in Iceland, Haraldur Sigurdsson, an Icelandic volcanologist. See what happens when you leave the country?
Yeah, I can't leave them alone, you know, they get into trouble.
Talk to me about what's happening there in those pictures.
Well, it's a beautiful eruption. It started, as you know, about 10 o'clock last night, and a fissure opened up 4 kilometers long, and there were fire fountains along the entire length of the fissure. There you go, that's last night. And these fountains of fire, or actually fountains of lava, were up to 200 meters in height. So this was an event that was kind of anticipated, although it had been such a long buildup, you know, ever since the 11th of November, that people were thinking about moving back into the town, which was evacuated. Now, the town is about 3 kilometers from the end of that fissure, and fortunately, the eruption seems to be slowing down. It's typical for these Icelandic fissure eruptions that they start with a big bang. They start with a lot of volume, and then they slow down. And this one is slowing down, in a few hours. So we may be seeing the end of this eruption before Christmas. And so maybe the people in the village of Grindavik will be able to move home before Christmas. Let's hope so.
Is it benign, or is it something to worry about?
Well, you never know. It certainly is a problem, but fortunately, this is in a fairly remote area, and the lava is unlikely to reach the populated areas. This is also a type of an eruption where you don't get explosions. These are fountains of magma, but they're not caused by explosions. They're caused by just pressure of the magma moving up and the gases that are contained. So it's not an explosive eruption. It's not going to impact aviation, but it produces a lot of lava. So the lava turns to rock, and so it's adding to Iceland. Iceland is building up all the time.
And this is because you have tectonic plates that meet underneath your country, is that right?
That's correct. We have two tectonic plates. One is the North American plate, that is to the west, goes from the Mid-Atlantic Ridge all the way to the Pacific. And the other one is the Eurasian plate, which goes from Iceland and the Mid-Atlantic Ridge all the way to eastern Siberia. So these plates are moving apart at about 2 centimeters per year on the average. But sometimes they stick and they don't move for a while, and then it jumps. So we're seeing one of these jumps of the plate motion. The average motion is about 2 centimeters per year. So it's a gradual process of the plates moving apart. And when the plate's moving apart, the hot mantle rock, which is the main body of the Earth, the hot mantle, moves upward into the void. And then when the mantle moves up, you have a decrease in pressure, and that decrease in pressure in the mantle brings about the melting and the formation of the magma.
Now, some 12, 13 years ago, Iceland was responsible for a volcano eruption that brought a lot of the airspace in the Northern Hemisphere to a standstill. Is there any chance that we could see this happening again?
Yeah, the eruption you're referring to is the Eyjafjallajökull eruption. You love that word, don't you?
That's why I didn't say it.
That eruption was an explosive event because there was a thick glacier on top of the volcano. So when the magma came up, it melted the glacier, and the glacier meltwater turned to steam, and the steam caused steam explosions, and that tore up the magma and created ash. And then the ash was carried upward into the atmosphere and carried over to Britain and the rest of Europe. It was an important event, but there were no problems actually with aircraft because of it, partly because there was the proper response of closing down aviation corridors. But the current eruption is not of this type. There is no glacier in that area.
Okay, but if this magma, this molten magma reaches the sea, does that create a similar issue or not?
The sea, yes, it can cause explosive activity if it flows into the ocean. But typically a magma like this would, because it's so fluid, it would flow along the sea floor and create what we call pillow lava. It creates bulbous masses because you have very quick cooling of the magma in contact with the seawater. So if it is in deeper water, it will not cause explosive activity.
For how long do you think it might be a problem? How long will people be out of their homes?
Well, actually, if I were living there, I'd be home by now. But I would say, personally, my view is that they should allow people to move back in. I think it's wise to be very careful, but hey, it's Christmas time and the holidays, and people have been locked out of their homes for a month or more. And it's having a big impact on society and the economy of the town, which has about 3,700 people.
Indeed. When are you going home?
Well, I was hoping to be there by Christmas, but we'll see. I'm not quite sure yet.
We will see. Thanks for taking the time to join us. We might have you on the telly again tomorrow, depending on what happens. It's good to see you. Thanks for staying up.
Thank you. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye. Let me tell you about the schools. Obviously, we'll keep an eye on what's going on there in Iceland. Pretty spectacular pictures, aren't they? Let me tell you about schools in England. They're about to receive new guidance on how to treat pupils who want to transition to a different gender. But some have already had their own policies, are unwilling to change, basically. Molly has more.
Down the school corridors, in the staff room and in the classroom too, there is a relatively new question.
How do you support transgender pupils?
With no textbook answer.
Our job is to respect children in terms of them exploring their identity.
New government guidance will advise schools on how to do that. It's about whether a teacher should allow children to socially transition, that's use a different pronoun, name or change their appearance, and whether they should inform their parents about it.
At this present time, I don't notify parents when children are questioning anything about themselves growing up unless I thought that they were at risk. It's about them having a supportive environment where they can explore a whole range of things.
There will be parents that find the idea of that exploration and not knowing about it concerning.
If we don't create a positive experience, they won't come to school and they'll be more unsafe.
There are around 30 children at this school in Liverpool that identify as trans, non-binary or gender fluid. For Jack, not his real name, socially transitioning at school made him feel accepted.
The reason why it was so important at school for teachers to use my correct pronoun was just so I could focus on being at school and learning and interacting socially with my peers.
Some politicians want socially transitioning to be banned altogether, but that was seen to go against equality laws. Nick Fletcher sits on the Education Select Committee.
There's an awful lot of areas in life which are grey, but I think the safeguarding of our children is not. It's black and white. There should be no social transitioning within schools.
The reality is that transgender children make up a small part of the pupil population, and yet they've become a big part of the political conversation. Will new guidance help or hinder? Molly Malone, Sky News.
Let's bring in Reverend Steve Chalk, who is the founder of the Oasis Trust. Who do you help?
Well, we work with young people across this country and in other countries as well. I founded Oasis back in 1985. We work with tens of thousands of young people in schools and in youth clubs every single day.
OK. Why is guidance for particularly schools, but I'm guessing other areas as well, given what you're saying, on transgender students so urgent?
Well, it's so urgent because without guidance, each teacher or staff member in a school is in a place where they're very vulnerable. So a child comes to them and trusts them. They're a trusted adult. It might not be a teacher, it could be the receptionist. Mm-hmm. You know, it could be anyone. And this child tells them this very personal thing. So what do they do with it? Who do they tell? What happens next? You know, does the law require them at that moment to inform parents? Is that the best thing for the child? All of those questions well up. So without guidance, it's very difficult for a staff member to feel safe themselves. We issued our own guidance, Oasis Schools issued our own guidance on this in about 2017, just because we knew that we couldn't leave staff to try to work it out all by themselves.
How do parents fit in?
Parents fit in, and I hope the guidance later today is going to say when it's in the best interests of the child, parents should be informed. But the problem is, okay, and if everything's good, that's obviously the thing to do, isn't it? But everything isn't always good. As you know, some children sadly live, I'm a minister myself, the Reverend Steve Chalk, but some children live in a repressive religious regime where to announce you're anything other than straight is a very condemning thing. So it's, if a child chooses to tell you something that matters to them, what a school needs to be is a sanctuary where they can explore their feelings and, of course, if possible, and when the time's right, of course you would engage parents.
What about if parents and the school are at odds?
Well, parents can be odds with themselves.
Exactly.
You know, many children, sadly, don't live with both of their birth parents for all sorts of reasons. So you'll sometimes find a situation where the parent they live with takes one view and the other parent takes a different view. So in that case, our guidance for our schools says that we should always go with the guidance of the parent they live with. Sometimes parents don't want the child to socially transition. Now, that's an important thing. When we're talking about transitioning for a child, we're not talking about surgical transitioning. You can only do that, as you know, when you're an adult past the age of 18. But we're talking about social transitioning. It's when somebody who's birth gender of a boy, they say, I want to be referred to as her, etc., etc. And so if a parent doesn't allow that, then a school isn't going to do it, but must still be a safe place for a child. What you do find is children will use a nickname, or they call themselves by a name that could refer to either sex, Lynn or Tony, or etc., etc. So there are ways of helping them. Sometimes a child at the age of 13 believes they want to transition for all sorts of reasons. By the time they're 16, of course, they're in a different place. But that's not always the case. Isn't it a brave thing for a child to be able to sit with a staff member in a school or in a youth club, wherever it might be, and say, this is what I'm struggling with. We've got to create a place of safety and sanctuary for them.
And we'll hear more about that later on today. Reverend, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Now, it can be pretty embarrassing, as we all know, when you're on the phone, or rather, your phone starts ringing when you're in the most inappropriate of places, in the middle of a performance at the theatre or whatever. But what about this?
Our heirs and successors within our United Kingdom amongst the barons. And also that you may enjoy and use...
The Labour peer Lord Woodley's phone started belting out the Mission Impossible theme tune while an Environment Minister was being introduced to the House of Lords. A little later, the red-faced Lord stood up to apologise for the interruption.
Could I first of all apologise to the Speaker and particularly to our new Lord Douglas Miller for my phone going off before. I've never been so embarrassed in all my life. I'm sincerely sorry.
Is it embarrassing that his phone went off, or is it the tune, the ringtone that he's got on his phone? I think he's probably changed that by now. Still to come, we're going to be telling you about the new drug that's been described as a game changer for women going through the menopause. And why this Barbie, Dr. Barbie, might need to go back to medical school. We'll tell you more.
The rule of thumb, I would say, for Christmas is make sure that whether you're looking for a bit of headspace, you're looking to have all the family together, you're looking to cater for everyone, that you've got slightly better than you have at home. What you don't want to be doing is getting yourself in a self-catering situation for huge groups of people where you have less kitchen space than you have at home, less hospitality space. So, of course, self-catering is huge in the UK for Christmas, where people just want to get together. Yeah, so it's just thinking about what you want out of that break. Because of course, not everybody wants to celebrate Christmas, or some people do want to escape it, and there are still places where you can get away from Christmas as well as for Christmas.
Like?
Well, some of the smaller snowy ski resorts, for example, don't do Christmas in a big, overly commercial way, and they're wintry and snowy and feel very seasonal without necessarily hearing Last Christmas every time you go anywhere. Personally, I love that, but it's not everybody's taste.
Yeah. Seville apparently is a very nice place to go.
Seville, beautiful. So I was just going to say, if you want to escape Christmas culture but want some different kind of culture, a bit of a deeper dive, somewhere like Seville gives you a bit of a lovely winter sun, not necessarily sunbathing sun, but just enough to warm your bones. Mm. Walk around those beautiful streets, amazing food in Seville, and it's really walkable as a city. And Norway is, seriously beautiful. Northern Lights, it's an amazingly popular place for cruises, for example, travelling in the fjords and so on. So, yeah, perfect winter destination.
But if you are staying, let's go back to home. If you are staying at home and you maybe have 3 generations of family, you need a house that's big enough. It's
big
probably
enough.
Too late now to get them, are there?
There are still some last-minute deals.
Okay.
Yeah, there are. But also, just sort of be adventurous in what you're thinking about. I think there are some really incredible architectural delights in the UK. I mean, there's a house called the Rainbow House in Lincolnshire, for example, which, as the name suggests, is kind of rainbow-shaped and really unusual. House in the Clouds in Norfolk. These places, if you're going with families and you're making memories, it's lovely to to have a sense of place as well as the actual people there.
Talk about a game-changing drug which can prevent hot flushes, benefiting hundreds of thousands of women. Jo McEwen, co-founder of Positive Pause and Menopause Movement, is here with us. Tell me everything.
You want to know about the game-changing drug?
I do.
Well, this is an amazing drug. It's UK developed by the team at Imperial College, and it's been in development for many years. And we first started following this in 2017. So it's so exciting to see it actually birth, if you like, in 2023, because it acts on the brain. It detects a protein, and it stops this protein that produces the hot flush, and it can be effective in 1 to 2 days. Currently, women have been taking, those who are able to take HRT or want to take HRT, can take 3 months, 6 months while they find the right prescription. Some women can't take it for underlying health reasons, personal philosophies, and this is going to be available hopefully in 2024.
So it's going to do the same thing that HRT does?
No, because HRT replaces the estrogen, and that
but
deals
the same
with
impact, basically. You don't get hot flushes.
Yes, well, no, it'll be better than HRT. If,
okay, that's great. HRT depends who you talk to. Feeds cancer, breast cancers. It can cause. It depends who you talk to.
Exactly.
I personally chose not to take it for that very reason, because of my family history. But you're saying that this drug is not an issue. You can take it even if you have a concern about breast cancer.
Because it's a non-hormonal drug. So this is why they're calling it game-changing, groundbreaking, because it opens the treatment options for women like yourself who say, I don't or can't take it or don't want to take it.
NHS, when is it going to be available? You can buy it privately at the moment?
You can buy it privately from the 5th of January. I think the price has still got to be determined.
Quite expensive, I think, 400 quid, something like that.
It is, but I think they haven't actually just come down on how much they're going to be charging for it initially. It'll be available on private prescription, and then it'll be reviewed by NICE sometime in 2024, and then I think we can expect probably a massive surge of interest because women are reading about it now going, let me get my hands on that.
So why has it taken so long? You said 2017 you were following it.
I think it has to just go through these processes. So it was developed by a team at Imperial College. They were involved in the testing of it. It then went out to the States, so it's already available in the States. I think it was May this year that it was licensed there. So it's kind of crept in, but I think these things just take a while to develop.
And how can people find out more about it?
I think the best place to look at it now would be on the British Menopause Society website or our own website.
That was I was throwing that to you so you could pick it up.
But we are Positive Pause, yes, on positivepause.co.uk, and we will be following this, as we have been doing for the last 6 years, and it's so exciting to see how it can benefit these
How
women.
has attitudes to menopause changed since 2017?
Oh, absolutely. We feel like the travel's in the right direction. There's still a long way to go. People are talking about it. Women are waking up to it and going, hang on a minute, why has nobody told me about this? Why is it affecting me in the workplace? Why aren't I getting the support? Why can't I kind of access more treatment? And I think that the genie's out of the bottle, really. We're going to see lots of different treatments, and I think workplaces need to raise their game. We've still got a long way to go. We do workplace training, and very enlightened employers are inviting us in, and others are just, I think, closing their eyes.
We do brilliant work here at Sky. You should come and talk to us.
We're always happy to come in.
Yeah, we have menopause cafes, all sorts of things.
Amazing.
It's good to see you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bear with me 1 second, if you would. Now, she may be leading the Golden Globe nominations after dazzling in movie theatres, but a new study claims that Barbie might need to go back to medical school if she wants to keep working in operating theatres. Why? Well, the study published in the British Medical Journal has found, after analysing 93 Barbie dolls, only 4% wore a face mask and none wore any gloves. On top of that, Barbie has been accused of flouting dress code rules, with more than 2/3 of the dolls wearing loose hair and more than half wearing high-heeled shoes, even in roles where this would be prohibited for safety reasons. These are the latest pictures reaching us from Iceland. We're going to have the latest on the volcanic eruption from there, live pictures as we speak. It's a couple of miles or so from the airport, having a little bit of an impact on flights, is what we're being told. So do check if you're planning to fly there today. We'll have the very latest with our correspondents coming up in just a moment here on Sky. Morning, everybody. It is 8 o'clock. Rescue workers are braving freezing temperatures of minus 13 degrees to search for survivors of an earthquake in northwest China. More than 100 people have been killed so far. And after weeks of seismic activity, a volcano has erupted in Iceland. We'll bring you the latest. It's Tuesday, the 19th of December. China's president has called for an all-out search and rescue effort to save as many lives as possible. In Iceland, jets of lava from a volcano lit up the night sky. More than 4,000 people have been moved to safety. Hamas has released a new video showing 3 elderly male hostages in their 70s and 80s. Their families say time is running out.
Israel has criticised the video as a cruel exploitation of elderly and vulnerable people.
TV legend Esther Rantzen says she could end her life at the Swiss clinic Dignitas. A government minister tells us Parliament must look again at assisted dying laws in the UK.
I think we need to go through it. At the point when it's looked at by Parliament again, we'll all have the opportunity to go through it. We'll all have the opportunity to talk in places like this. It will be a big discussion and debate that the country has.
English Heritage reveals Christmas carols are being sung to the wrong tune. Morning, everybody. Ashna and Gurpreet are with us this morning. I couldn't carry a tune in a bucket, so nobody would recognise what I was singing anyway. Volcanoes.
Yes, a huge volcano in Iceland overnight. Fire fountains up to 200 metres in height, so we're currently battling that at the moment. Live pictures being brought to our viewers.
Yeah, fire fountains. I love that description. These are live pictures. Of course, it doesn't really get light in Iceland at this time of year, so it's going to be pretty spectacular throughout. I know you're going to update us very shortly. And Gurpreet, talk to me about the amazing Esther Rantzen. She's on a lot of the front pages today.
Yeah, so we're going to be getting into the debate around assisted dying after Esther Rantzen revealed that she joined the Dignitas clinic in Zurich.
OK, more on that to come, ladies. Thank you both very much indeed. Before that, though, at least 116 people have been killed in an earthquake in northwest China. The earthquake in the province of Gansu happened just before midnight. Jishan, there you go, county, I should say, was the worst hit area with freezing temperatures of below minus 13 degrees, hampering the rescue effort. Here's Tom with more.
In China's cold and mountainous northwest, the devastation of this earthquake is starting to become clear. Buildings are now piles of rubble. Emergency services scrambled to find survivors and were making sense of the scale of the disaster.
At 23:59 on December 18, 2023, an earthquake of 6.2 magnitude happened in Jixingsha County, Linsha Prefecture. The depth of focus of the earthquake is 10 kilometres.
People are now struggling with no power or water. Roads have been destroyed, making it more difficult for rescue workers to reach the areas most in need. China's state broadcaster has reported that President Xi Jinping has called for an all-out search and rescue effort, and 5,000 rescue workers have been sent to the region. In sub-zero temperatures, survivors have been forced to make fires outside as they struggle to stay warm. The first trickle of aid has made its way to the area, and Taiwan's president has offered their support in the disaster recovery. That recovery looks set to take some time. Tom Cheshire, Sky News.
What's happening in Iceland? Saw those pictures at the top of the programme. Ashna's here with more detail. Hi.
Hello. Yeah, 10:30 last night, huge eruption of a volcano on the southwest of Iceland. It's currently causing a lot of panic for people there. Already, it's quite near a town, a fishing town called Grindavik. That was evacuated last month. So there aren't currently any people in imminent danger. Their homes, though, will be significantly damaged by this. As you might be able to tell on your screen, it's actually explosions and fire fountains, as one volcanologist has described it, shooting up to 200 metres metres in the air. That crack stretches some 2 miles long, and the worry is that it's inching closer towards civilization and where people are. Of course, in Iceland, it's very sporadic. There are lots of, the geographical territory of it is not so much kind of pockets of towns. This area, it's quite mountainous and scarce of people, but it is also quite close to the water, which could be an issue and could cause a bit of a cloud eruption that we last saw in 2010. No obvious sign of that at the moment, but of course people remember some 13 years ago now that hundreds and thousands of flights across Europe were grounded because of that ash cloud at that time. So real concern for people there. Scientists saying, however, we're unlikely to see pictures like this. We're unlikely to see an ash cloud, but perhaps this lava, this molten rock that's currently spewing from that crack could cause problems elsewhere.
Yeah, and we spoke to a volcanologist in the last hour. He was talking about magma pillows under the sea, which I quite like the sound of.
I've never heard of that, but he is right. I mean, he talks about deep water. So if lava meets deep water, you can create this pillow lava, as he described it, where it moves along the water. But if it's shallow water, that's where you could get an issue with ash clouds and ash plumes being a problem for people there.
OK. How long is it going to be like this for?
Well, some people are saying that they would feel comfortable moving back into their homes this week. Of course, Christmas coming up, real concern for people there about whether their belongings are intact. In truth, it could be like this for a number of weeks, although it has been said that it is slowing down and not growing. But real concerns that, you know, we're talking about this area being near the Blue Lagoon tourist attraction, near the airport, and some 30 miles away from the capital. And it's if it meets towns and villages, that's when it becomes a real issue. But fingers crossed, people in home will be home in time for Christmas, although that can't be certain just yet.
No, only happened at 10 o'clock last night, didn't it? So let's wait and see what happens in the coming hours. We sent Thomas Moore, his flight, hardly surprisingly, slightly delayed as a result of this, should have taken off about now, hoping to talk to him very shortly indeed. He's on his way to Iceland when he can get there. Thank you. Looking at some of today's other headlines for you. In the meantime, North Korea has tested a long-range missile which is believed to have the potential to reach anywhere in the US. South Korean military officials claim the launch was made near Pyongyang towards the sea off the country's east coast and flew about 1,000 kilometres. The storm has injured at least 15 people at a festival in Argentina. Parts of the stage at the Fiesta Brecht festival in Buenos Aires were blown apart by winds of more than 90 miles an hour. The actor Jonathan Majors, best known for playing Kang in the Marvel films, has been found guilty of assaulting his former girlfriend, Grace Jabari. He faces up to a year in jail. Darren Jones is with us. Hi, it's good to see you. Thanks for joining us on the programme this morning. 10 senior Tory MPs have written to the PM saying the case for an immediate ceasefire is unanswerable here as far as Israel-Hamas is concerned. Do you agree?
Yes, we want to get to a position where a long-lasting ceasefire can be in place because, of course, you want to get back to a political dialogue about securing a two-state solution. But ceasefires only happen because the people fighting each other agree to it, and that's why the diplomatic efforts are so important in trying to secure that outcome.
We're told by some organisations that Gaza is on the verge of famine. We need to do something.
Absolutely. That's why the aid and the availability and access of aid has been as important a part of the conversation as the release of hostages and trying to get to a position of peace from the very beginning. That's why the UK and our allies have been making that case, trying to work with Egypt and other partners in the region to get aid into the area and to get people to a position of safety. This is one of the inevitable tragedies of a war like this, and that's why the sooner we get to a position of peace, the better.
Not my words, the MPs' words, the 10 senior Tory MPs. Brutalisation of the civilian Palestinian population. Yesterday, the main man for the Catholic Church in England was sat where you are.
Absolutely.
And he was saying, that as far as he was concerned, the Israeli Defence Force was responsible for the deaths of 2 churchgoers.
Well, look, in war, there's always one side responsible for the consequences of their actions, and all of us will have a common sense of humanity in wanting this fighting to stop. Of course we do. But you've got to persuade both sides to get to that position, and there's a whole number of things that need to happen, which is why we welcomed the long humanitarian pause that started that process of hostages being released and more aid being made available into Gaza, but clearly there's much more that needs to be done.
Yeah, but it's gone too far now, is what you're saying.
All war has gone too far when a war has started. You never want to end up in a position of war in any circumstance. It's definitely gone too far at that point. Diplomacy and politics has failed when war starts in any situation. And the longer it goes on, the more tragic it is, and the more impetus needs to be behind trying to end it and get to that position of peace that everyone wants.
Talk to me about the magnificent Esther Ranson. You've seen her picture on so many of the front pages this morning. She feels that she might have no choice but to go to Dignitas because she cannot end her life here in the UK legally, and she's worried about taking a family member with her to hold her hands during her last breath because they could face 14 years in prison when they come back to the UK. What needs to be done about that?
Well, the law was written, I think, in the 1960s around what's referred to as assisted dying, where people go with somebody that ends their own lives in those circumstances. If that's to be updated, then it needs to go through a process in Parliament, and it's one of these issues that we call kind of conscience vote issues. It's not a party political issue, but that requires a fairly lengthy process to start where, for example, a committee will take evidence, the House gets to debate it, you'd want to know how the law might be drafted, what the checks and balances are, the scope of it, what the review periods are. There's quite a lot of detail around these types of votes because they are really, really important and very sensitive issues. And so before you would even get to a position on voting on anything, there's a process that Parliament would need to go through that hasn't started in Parliament. So if we...
Should it?
Well, I think clearly there's a demand from the public to have this debate. And, if the public want to have a debate on an issue like this, the House of Commons is there to serve the public. And so it should be debated, yes.
What does your conscience tell you should happen?
Do you know, Kay, MPs have their own personal views and they also represent their constituents. And I was asked in another interview this morning how I would vote on a piece of hypothetical legislation, and I wouldn't say how I was going to vote, not because I'm sitting on the fence or hiding anything, but because on an issue as sensitive as this, it's my duty to talk to my constituents, to consider the detail when it's published by whoever is in government at that time, and to take a very careful and considered view. And what I don't want to do is preempt a debate, which I think is going to happen probably sooner rather than later in our political system, by taking a view at this stage before I've had that chance to talk to constituents and look at any detail.
But if you were my MP, I would want to know what your conscience is telling you.
Yeah, and if you were my constituent, I would have those opportunities to talk to you locally.
So you do have a view, just don't want to share
about it. No, when you talk to your constituents, it's not about telling them what your view is, it's about listening to them. And the best way to do that is that when you have the detail, you can put it in front of everybody, look at it and have a conversation based on its merits.
When you vote in the House of Commons, surely you vote with your own conscience. That's what you were saying. You don't vote specifically on what your constituents are telling you to vote on.
Oh no, well, greater people than I have said, and you will know, you're representing your constituents, you're representing the country, and you're representing your party when you vote on things in the House of Commons. And most votes week in, week out are not particularly controversial, but where there are votes that are sensitive and where people have maybe deeply held views, you've got to balance those competing priorities. And any good constituency MP will engage with their constituents and take the opportunity to listen to them before coming to a view. And you have to take a view and then you have to explain how you came to that view.
I understand that, but it cannot be right that if I decided that I wanted to go to Dignitas and my son went with me, that he could face 14 years in jail when he came back. That cannot be right.
So I agree with you on that point. And look, when the Crown Prosecution Service, I understand when Keir Starmer was running it, said that cases where there is a clear sense of compassion will not be prosecuted in the public interest, only where there's a case of vested interest or kind of malpractice. And so the system as it is today kind of allows for that to happen, but it's not designed in the right way because the law is very out of date, which is why I think this debate is important. All I'm saying is you have to do these types of things very carefully and sensibly.
Can we agree that the law needs to be updated?
I think the law should be updated. If it was last written in the 1960s, we should be talking about that in the context of our modern society and thinking about what we want to do.
OK. While we're talking about doctors, I read in The Guardian today, have a good sip of your tea.
Sorry, thank you.
No, not at all. That's what it's there for. And I'm reading that a Labour government would treat increasing the pay of junior doctors as a journey, not an event. What does that mean?
Well, it means that obviously the pay dispute needs to be settled. We would rather the Conservatives in government did that now because we want to get all of those doctors back doing the jobs that they've trained and worked so hard to do. But evidently, there's always a trade-off between the things you would like to do and the things you can afford to do. I know that only too well, being a member of the Shadow Treasury team. And the economy is in a really bad position. We have lots of plans to get the economy growing, to reform our public services, to
So the bottom line is
waste.
they're not going to get their 35%, are they?
I think where Streeton is, the Shadow Health Secretary has been very clear that we can't afford a 35% pay rise at this time, and that's probably what that language is referring to. But we have to be successful in growing the economy, reforming our public services, and ending the huge amounts of waste in government that we've seen under the Conservatives, so that there's more money available for
How are we all going to fix our teeth?
Well, we've got a dentistry recovery plan, which we're announcing today, which has a number of things in it. We've said that we'll fund 700,000 additional urgent NHS appointments across the country, because we know many people can't get an NHS appointment. We've said that we'll incentivise newly qualified dentists to set up their practice in areas where there are no or little NHS dentists in that community, and require them to stay there for a number of years in return for that incentive payment. We've said we're going to bring back the supervised toothbrushing scheme in schools, that mean that children learn from an early age good oral hygiene to prevent them getting bad teeth in the first place. And of course, we've got to deal with the NHS dentistry contract, which is the fundamental problem that's preventing dentists from doing more NHS work in the course of a year for patients who need it.
Should Michelle Mone be kicked out of the House of Lords?
Yes, I think she probably should. She's admitted, well, she probably wouldn't say she admitted to wrongdoing, but it sounded like wrongdoing to me from the interview over the weekend. We've had a number of cases in the House of Lords where peers have broken the law or acted unethically.
We can't say she's broken the law yet. I think I'm right.
No. I'm saying other peers have broken the law. Yeah, sure. Thank you for my benefit there. Other peers have broken the law in the past. House of Lords has updated some of their schemes, but I don't think it's quite as robust as we have in the House of Commons with the Standards Commissioner and the right to lose your job as a consequence of bad behaviour. And that's
but bye-bye,
Baroness
Baroness Mone, as far as you're concerned.
Well, look, clearly there's more to this story to come out. I mean, we've seen the front pages this morning, about what ministers knew what, about the lengths of contracts, the amounts of awards, the kind of special treatment. That's what she's claiming. That's why we in the Labour Party have said there needs to be an independent investigation of the conduct of Conservative ministers and how we ended up in this situation in the first place. We shouldn't really be having this slanging match through the media between Conservative peers and Conservative ministers. We should really get to the truth. And as Rachel Reeves, my boss, has clearly pointed out, appoint a COVID commissioner so we can get back our money from people that took it away from us illegitimately during the COVID pandemic.
How's the tea?
It's coffee, actually, and it's very welcome because I didn't get much sleep last night.
Oh, OK. Well,
my kids are here, so it's keeping me going.
You're very welcome.
Thank
Merry
you so
Christmas.
much. And to you.
They still believe in Father Christmas, obviously.
Well, why wouldn't they?
Exactly. How old are they?
6, 4 and 4 months.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
No wonder you don't get much sleep.
It was the 4-year-old. She had a bad cough and she was coughing until about 5:15 this morning.
And
went
you were
to sleep.
Up at 5:20.
And then 5:30, my alarm to come and talk to you and others.
There we go. It's good to see you. Enjoy the coffee.
Thanks
very much indeed. Thank you. Now, let me tell you about the Government Minister Lee Rowley. He told this programme that Parliament should look again at the laws on assisted dying. This is what he said.
I don't want their last memories of me to be painful, because if you watch someone...
I think it needs to be. I think we need to go through it. At the point when it's looked at by Parliament again, we'll all have the opportunity to go through it. We'll all have the opportunity to talk in places like this. It will be a big discussion and debate that the country has. But there are no absolutes here. It's all about trying to find the right balance, but also recognising human life is very sacred and we should be very careful.
Let's talk about it in more detail, should we? Gurpreet is here. Labour also just saying the laws need to be looked at again.
Yeah, so today we're talking about this because Dame Esther Ranson, 83 years old, she's suffering from stage 4 lung cancer, and she told a podcast, in her own words, I might buzz off to Zurich if that treatment doesn't work. She's joined Dignitas. It's a not-for-profit organisation that provides assisted dying to relieve suffering. It's often used by those suffering from terminal illnesses. And touching on just how difficult this is for families and individuals, she said that if she did decide to have an assisted death, that would put my family and friends in a difficult position because they would want to go with me. And that means that the police might prosecute them, which is once again opened up the debate about assisted dying. It's banned in England, Wales and Northern Ireland, carrying a maximum prison sentence of 14 years. In Scotland, it's prosecuted under murder and manslaughter laws. Campaigners for assisted dying say a change in the law would give people suffering from terminal illnesses better control over how and when they die. But opponents say that it could threaten vulnerable older people. It's a very fraught and philosophical debate. It's something that politicians find really difficult. You heard from Kay Burley there saying that Parliament needs to look at this again. Labour also suggesting that it needs to be looked at again. Dame Esther said that, you know, if she could, she would give everyone a free vote over this issue. It is something that MPs are looking at. The Health and Social Care Committee launched an inquiry into this around this time last year. It's heard some very difficult and moving testimony. It's due to report back on that soon, but it's not yet clear whether that's going to lead us anywhere closer to a change in the law.
We'll see. For now, thank you. Hamas has released a new video showing 3 elderly male hostages, the kibbutz where they lived before they were kidnapped on October the 7th, say time is running out. Let's get more, should we, with Alistair. What more do we know about these 3 elderly gentlemen? Alistair, good morning.
Good morning. Well, I mean, the first thing to say is we don't show videos like this when they very likely could have been filmed with the men under duress. But the video has been released by Hamas, and I think they have done it for a number of reasons. I think, firstly, it is to increase pressure on Israel to agree to a new hostage release deal. Hamas, albeit under heavy fighting for a number of months, will no doubt be aware of the domestic pressure within Israel on the Benjamin Netanyahu government to try and come to some new agreement. And I imagine Hamas would be quite eager for that, to give them another respite from the intense fighting that they've been engaging with the Israeli forces. Also, I think there is something significant in who features in the video: 3 elderly men, and that would suggest that Hamas is willing to release hostages in that category. So far, we have seen largely women and children being released, but not the elderly men or anyone suffering from severe medical conditions. Now, Israel has said that before anything, they want to see the remaining women and children come out. I think that's 19 women and 2 children. The negotiations for another agreement have started to gather pace again over recent days. The head of the CIA, Bill Burns, met with his counterpart in Israel, the head of the Mossad, and the Qatari Prime Minister in Warsaw over the last 24 or so hours to try and see whether progress can be made. That's the first such meeting of such senior officials face-to-face since the previous ceasefire broke down. However, the Americans have said on record that they don't believe a new hostage deal is imminent.
OK, for now, thank you. Now, the Royal Navy is joining a US-led task force to protect ships in the Red Sea, which have been attacked by Houthi rebels from Yemen. Let's get more with Mark.
From the bridge of the USS Carney, this is what protecting one of the world's busiest shipping lanes looks like at the moment. The American destroyer intercepting missiles from Yemeni rebels who are targeting commercial ships in the Red Sea. The US Defense Secretary, on a visit to Israel, hinted at an announcement which would come soon after.
These attacks are reckless, dangerous, and they violate international law. And so we're taking action to build an international coalition to address this threat.
In a statement confirming the details of the coalition, he said, "I am announcing the establishment of Operation Prosperity Guardian, an important new multinational security initiative. The recent escalation in reckless Houthi attacks originating from Yemen threatens the free flow of commerce, endangers innocent mariners. This is an international challenge that demands collective action." Last month, this extraordinary video produced by the Houthi group was designed to show their sophistication, but also their desire to piggyback the Palestinian cause, the Palestinian flag alongside their own on the back of the helicopter. They boarded and seized a commercial ship. This represents an unprecedented threat to commerce passing through here, and it is having an impact. BP has now stopped transporting oil via the Suez Canal. and one of the world's biggest shipping companies has called for the greater international protection that is now being pledged.
After we had an attack on one of our container ships last Friday morning in the Red Sea, we decided to pause our ships and no longer send ships through the canal. We are now planning for the next 2 to 3 weeks. Then we will have an assessment again.
The attacks are persisting despite the presence already of American and British naval forces. The British say HMS Diamond, which has only just arrived in the region, has already intercepted Houthi missiles. Clearly, all of this already indicates a new economic front in this Middle East war, with supply line issues and potential global ramifications there. But much more than that, a military coalition of so many different countries, including the UK, the US, France, Spain, the Netherlands and others. This is a new military front with the potential of military escalation, intentional or otherwise. The presence of warships in the region will certainly heighten tensions. Regional foes are posturing, seeking advantages, exploiting weaknesses. And this won't encourage commercial ships back anytime soon. Mark Stone, Sky News in Washington.
Let's take you back up to Iceland, where the volcano erupted finally last night about 10 o'clock. They're on the same timeline as us, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. Last month, or about late October actually, seismic activity started in this part of Iceland. So we're talking about the southwest peninsula, for those familiar with the country. It's sort of near a fishing town called Grindavik, but also quite near the airport as well, and the Blue Lagoon tourist attraction. So it started back in late October, these rumblings that was already starting to damage homes. We saw pictures of giant cracks in the roads there. So lots of people were already evacuated from their homes. Some 4,000 people live in this fishing town. And finally, some weeks after not being able to go home, they had the sort of culmination of the reason why they were evacuated, this eruption that happened last night. As you say, 10:30 at night. So these pictures coming into us just overnight, and these ones live shots. These fire fountains, as some people are calling them.
I love that description.
Yeah, it's so illustrative, isn't it, of what's going on. So 200 metres in the air is what this lava is said to be being flung into. And we can see from other pictures that some of this lava now is cascading downhill, almost seeping into the kind of mountains and surrounding areas. And this is a crack now that's stretching some 3.5 kilometres, about 2 miles long, that some are suggesting is still growing, albeit that the lava, you know, those kind of fountains and the plumes of lava aren't quite as 200 metres high as they were. They are still flinging that lava into the air. And obviously at the moment, people can't go anywhere near it. And real concerns that people will not be able to return home for people that live in that town, which means that the local economy isn't functioning. But this is something that this country is very used to. They deal with volcanic activity all the time.
I was just looking it up, actually, as we were chatting. Eurasian and North American tectonic plates.
Yes.
Rubbed together there, and then on occasion they break apart, and this is exactly why these volcanoes happen. But people just tuning our way this morning, good morning, wherever you're watching us around the world. You would think with a volcano, you think that more of a tunnel, don't you?
Yes, so a traditional volcanic blast, if you will, is almost like a jet of lava that kind of it comes out of a peak, if you will, a traditional volcanic peak. But this is more of a fissure, so it's kind of like a long crack, long, deep crack, which is therefore allowing this kind of the rubbing together of these plates and then therefore the lava coming out from it. It creates more of a problem because that crack can grow either north or south. At the moment, it's growing more towards the north and therefore away from the town that I was speaking about. But as it inches closer to, say, seawater, that can cause problems of its own, where if it interacts with water, the lava, you've got that potential for a kind of an ash cloud situation. At the moment, it doesn't seem like we're anywhere near that currently.
OK, so just to, obviously, it looks dark there. It's often dark, almost for 24 hours in Iceland this time of year, so the pictures will be pretty spectacular throughout the day. Thankfully, no reports of any injuries. Quick look at the weather here.
Warm memories wherever you go. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Next few days looking mostly unsettled, mild, but there'll be some colder spells, mainly for northern parts. Quite chilly in the windy north now, still mild in the south though. Early rain over Wales and the southern half of England will become largely confined to the southeast by midday. Excuse me. Most places will then be dry with good sunny spells, but there'll be showers in the north and also the west, wintry on the Scottish hills.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Do you recognise this festive tune? Well, it's While Shepherds Watch Their Flock by Night, sung to what English Heritage say is the correct tune. Researchers say that many of our favourite carols were standardised during the 19th century and their original music was lost. And will you be having carrots with your Christmas dinner? Of course you will. Well, it's a very good idea. Why? Well, they might not help you see in the dark, but scientists say they can help us avoid cancer. A study by Newcastle University found eating 5 servings of the vegetable a week reduces the chances of developing the disease by as much as 20%. What better excuse than to pile on the trimmings this Christmas? Still to come on the programme for you, could the eruption in Iceland shut down European airspace again as it did in 2010? We'll hear more on that in just a moment, and we'll be discussing the latest situation in Gaza with former British Army Chief General Lord Richard Dannatt.
The 5 of us have made it out of the car.
Welcome to Backstage, the film and TV podcast.
Hello again, everybody. These are live pictures from Iceland. Here we go, where lava fountains are lighting up the sky there, of course, although it's 8:34 here, same time actually in Iceland as we speak. They don't really see much daylight at this time of the year, making for these magnificent images, not perhaps for the people who have been evacuated from one of the small villages not too far away. We're told that this fissure is growing all the time. It's around about 4 kilometres or thereabouts at the moment. At its peak, when it first started to erupt, 10 o'clock last night, those lava fountains up to 200 metres in the air. This is what an expert told us.
Well, it's a beautiful eruption. It started, as you know, about 10 o'clock last night, and a fissure opened up 4 kilometers long, and there were fire fountains along the entire length of the fissure. There you go, that's last night. And these fountains of fire, or actually fountains of lava, were up to 200 meters in height. So this was an event that was kind of anticipated, although it had been such a long build-up, you know, ever since the 11th of November, that people were thinking about moving back into the town, which was evacuated. Now, the town is about 3 kilometers from the end of that fissure, and fortunately, the eruption seems to be slowing down. It's typical for these Icelandic fissure eruptions that they start with a big bang, you know, they start with a lot of volume, and then they slow down. And this one is slowing down, you know, in a few hours. So we may be seeing the end of this eruption before Christmas. And so maybe the people in the village of Grindavik will be able to move home before Christmas. Let's hope so.
Is it benign, or is it something to worry about?
Well, you never know. It certainly is a problem, but fortunately, this is in a fairly remote area, and the lava is unlikely to reach the populated areas. This is also a type of an eruption where you don't get explosions. These are fountains of magma, but they're not caused by explosions. They're caused by just pressure of the magma moving up and the gases that are contained. So it's not an explosive eruption. It's not going to impact aviation, but it produces a lot of lava. So the lava turns to rock, and so it's adding to Iceland. Iceland is building up all the time.
And this is because you have tectonic plates that meet underneath your country, is that right?
That's correct. We have two tectonic plates. One is the North American plate, that is to the west, goes from the Mid-Atlantic Ridge all the way to the Pacific. And the other one is the Eurasian plate, which goes from, you know, Iceland and the Mid-Atlantic Ridge all the way to eastern Siberia. So these plates are moving apart at about 2 centimeters per year on the average. But sometimes they stick and they don't move for a while, and then it jumps. So we're seeing one of these jumps of the plate motion. The average motion is about 2 centimeters per year. So it's a gradual process of the plates moving apart. And when the plate's moving apart, the hot mantle rock, which is the main body of the Earth, the hot mantle, moves upward into the void. And then when the mantle moves up, you have a decrease in pressure, and that decrease in pressure in the mantle brings about the melting and the formation of the magma.
Lord Richard Dunnett is with us this morning, former Chief of the General Staff. It's good to see you. Thank you for joining us on the programme. Let's talk first of all about what's happening in the Red Sea. What kind of protection is the US providing in the Red Sea at the moment, and what is our Navy doing to help?
Well, it's an important challenge that we've got to respond to, because the potential effect on shipping is huge. If international shipping, particularly fuel-carrying vessels, have to go around the Cape, it adds 10, 12 days. The US are taking the initiative to put an international coalition together, and the UK is contributing to that. One understands that one of our warships is now part of that international coalition. I think this is a different threat to the piracy threat that we got to know quite well over sort of 5, 10, 15 years ago, which was a skiff and half a dozen guys with AK-47s trying to take over ships. Think Captain Phillips and
they were
all that.
effective on occasion, to be fair, weren't they?
Yeah, they were. No, absolutely. And that threat has been controlled and to a large extent managed away. This is a different kind of threat because it's a threat from Houthi Iranian-supplied missiles. And there's a technical challenge involved in that for the navies of the world to work out. I think the analogy that people would understand is the Israeli Iron Dome principle of being able to protect against the incoming missiles. I think what the navies in this coalition have got to do is to work out a way that they can technically secure international shipping to the point that shipping is confident enough.
Who's doing this? Why is
well,
it happening?
I mean, this looks like a very well-staged attack, doesn't it? One understands it's Hutu rebels or Hutu fighters from Yemen. But I think this has been very carefully put together to put the frighteners on international shipping companies to say, wow, do we really want to take the risk of our ships going through the Straits, or would it not be better to go around the Cape? And although that won't affect the volume of trade, it'll affect the timing of trade. I think it'll have quite an effect on energy prices as well. So this is a real issue. It's an issue, I think, that possibly governments hadn't really thought through becoming a possibility. But it's there, it exists, and it's got to be stood up to.
Meantime, in Gaza, we had Mark Regev, senior advisor to the Israeli Prime Minister, on the programme yesterday. He was not having any of it when it was suggested that the IDF was responsible for churchgoers being shot by a marksman in Gaza. What's your view?
Well, Kay, I think the fact of the matter is neither you nor I were there, so actually we really don't know. We only can repeat, if you like, statements that are put out. I think it's entirely possible that there was a misidentification by an IDF soldier. Let's face it, we saw the 3 hostages that were killed by an IDF sniper who thought he was doing the right thing but was clearly doing the wrong thing. So it's possible. Equally, it's quite possible that it could be a Hamas fighter who chose to squeeze the trigger, kill those 2 people and accuse the Israelis of doing it. So we're all, if you like, on the wrong end of some of the propaganda and stories that are being put out because people want to provoke some kind of reaction. And of course, the major reaction that is being provoked very successfully is movement support away from Israel on the basis that what they're doing is no longer proportionate and that too many Gazan civilians are being killed.
As an army man, how successful, in your opinion, is the IDF being?
Well, the IDF's got a real challenge, but I think, and this is what Ben Wallace, I think, was getting at in his piece in The Telegraph yesterday, and it's a classic example of insurgency and counterinsurgency. If the government forces react too strongly, then you always create the effect of more people wanting to join the insurgency. Now, in the case of Israel, if Israel is being perceived by the world, and particularly Palestinian people, of reacting too strongly, then it's going to increase support for Palestine. So I think the deduction has to be not to call for a ceasefire, because that does not solve the problem that Israel legitimately is trying to solve, which is to smash Hamas's military capability. I think it's to be more measured and more deliberate and more intelligent-led about the way it's conducting its operations, which means it'll probably take much longer, so that they're going to have to be prepared to ride the wave of criticism by the international community. But I think if they can demonstrate that they're being as careful and as focused and as intelligence-led as possible in the targets that they strike, both from the air and particularly on the ground and under the ground in Gaza, then they can start to win back support to enable this campaign to go on longer, to actually get at the Hamas fighters.
As we focus on that area of the world, Ukraine continues to try to rid themselves of Russian soldiers. How's that going?
Well, I think the concern is that, quite rightly, since the 7th of October, international opinion or international focus has been very much on Israel and Gaza. And, of course, this is to the advantage of Putin and not to the advantage of Ukraine. Throw into the mix that Joe Biden is struggling to get the package of many billion of dollars of aid and assistance to Ukraine, and the same with the European Union. Both of those major packages, which the Ukrainians desperately need, have been blocked. Now, I'm sure they'll come through in the fullness of time, but it's another symptom of the world being preoccupied by the most pressing and urgent issue, which is now Israel and Gaza, and Ukraine being left on the sidelines. But bring it home to us in the UK, bring it home to us in Europe. Actually, Ukraine really, really matters to us, and the security of Western Europe really matters to us. So we must continue to do all we can to support Ukraine.
On a lighter note, my lord, were you in the chamber yesterday?
I was.
Did you see what happened when one of your colleagues' phone rang?
I didn't see that. It does happen from time to time. Go on, Kay, tell me what happened.
It was the Mission Impossible theme tune. Here we go. Have a quick look.
Okay.
Our heirs and successors within our United Kingdom amongst the barons. And also
He was being introduced as well. Mind you, it could have been someone, it's the wife. You can't make it up.
Absolutely not. A red-faced lord stood up to apologise for the interruption.
But it happens during prayers quite often.
Yeah, does it?
Could I first of all apologise to the Speaker and particularly to our new Lord Douglas Miller for my phone going up before. I've never been so embarrassed in all my life. I'm sincerely sorry.
You were saying it happens during prayers quite a lot.
I mean, of course it can happen. I mean, we're all guilty occasionally of forgetting to turn our phone off.
Oh, well, it's rule number one in the studio.
But,
always make sure it's on mute.
Yeah, mine's on mute.
Yes, I know.
I could ring you up, but I'm not going to because we're talking.
No need. It's good to see you, my lord.
You too.
Merry Christmas. Thank
Merry
you
Christmas
very
to you,
much
Kay. Yep.
Thank you. Coming up in just a few moments' time, you might be deciding to head off to the slopes rather than stay at home for Christmas. We'll be talking to a ski instructor next. And why this Barbie might need to go back to medical school. We'll tell you all about that coming up.
The rule of thumb, I would say, for Christmas is make sure that whether you're looking for a bit of headspace, you're looking to have all the family together, you're looking to cater for everyone, that you've got slightly better than you have at home. What you don't want to be doing is getting yourself in a self-catering situation for huge groups of people where you have less kitchen space than you have at home, less hospitality space. So, of course, self-catering is huge in the UK for Christmas, where people just want to get together. Yeah, so it's just thinking about what you want out of that break. Because, of course, not everybody wants to celebrate Christmas, or, you know, some people do want to escape it. And there are still places where you can get away from Christmas as well as for Christmas.
Like?
Well, you know, some of the smaller snowy ski resorts, for example, don't do Christmas in a big, overly commercial way. And they're wintry and snowy and feel very seasonal without necessarily hearing Last Christmas every time you go anywhere. Personally, I love that, but it's not everybody's taste.
Yeah. Seville apparently is a very nice place to go.
Seville, beautiful. So I was just going to say, you know, if you want to escape Christmas culture but want some different kind of culture, a bit of a deeper dive, you know, somewhere like Seville gives you a bit of a lovely winter sun, not necessarily sunbathing sun, but just enough to warm your bones. Mm. Walk around those beautiful streets, you know, amazing food in Seville, and it's really walkable as a city. And Norway is, you know, seriously beautiful. Northern Lights, you know, it's an amazingly popular place for cruises, for example, you know, travelling in the fjords and so on. So, yeah, perfect winter destination.
But if you are staying, let's go back to home. If you are staying at home and you maybe have 3 generations of family, you need a house that's big enough. It's
big
probably
enough.
too late now to get them, are there?
There are still some last-minute deals,
Okay.
yeah, there are. But also, you know, just sort of be adventurous in what you're thinking about. You know, I think there are some really incredible architectural delights in the UK. I mean, there's a house called the Rainbow House in Lincolnshire, for example, which, as the name suggests, is kind of rainbow-shaped and really unusual. House in the Clouds in Norfolk. You know, these places, if you're going with families and you're making memories, it's lovely to, you know, to have a sense of place as well as the actual people there.
Commissioner, still with us, keeping an eye on what's happening in Iceland for us this morning. Impact on flights at all?
Well, at the moment, we've seen a British Airways flight go this morning. That left about 7:30, and there are currently flights from Icelandic Air that are due to take off throughout the day from various airports. Iceland's foreign minister saying there are currently no disruption to flights in and out of the country, but they are keeping an eye on it. The worry is if some of that lava that people can see on their screens suddenly interacts with water in some way, that could create potential ash clouds, but currently no sign of that yet.
OK, 3,000, 4,000 people have been moved?
Yeah, from a fishing town, Grindavik. So they're about 2 miles away from where this initial eruption happened. And they were evacuated from their homes last month because there was some seismic activity going on, which meant that some of them had damage to their homes. We also saw giant cracks appearing in roads leading up to that town. They're concerned that they're not going to be able to be allowed back into their homes, or if they've got anything to go back to imminently. They're currently staying in local hotels and temporary accommodation. But thankfully, it doesn't appear as though anyone was in that town when this happened last night.
Hold that thought, because we're going to go from fire to ice. And Roddy Willis, independent ski instructor in Verbier, is with us. Hi, it's good to see you. Thanks for joining us on the programme this morning. What are conditions like for skiers at the moment?
Amazing. They're the best in decades. We've had early snowfalls. We've got great skiing, maybe you can see in the background, the snow cover, and it's really been fantastic. The last week has been one of the best weeks skiing at this time of year, probably since the 80s.
Wow, that's amazing, Roddy, because it's been a challenging few years, hasn't it? Not least because of the pandemic.
Pandemic and climate change. We've had less snow over the last few seasons, but it's almost like climate change hasn't really existed this year. And the skiing is amazing.
Well, that's fantastic. Where should people go?
Aim high for all the high resorts, Val d'Isère, Courchevel, Verbier. All the resorts are above 1,500 metres will have good snow cover.
Oh, OK, there we go. That's a fantastic image of Courchevel as we are chatting to you. Looks absolutely amazing. And Val d'Isère as well, also fabulous, yeah?
Yep, all fabulous, yeah.
OK, a busy festive period, is it, over, people coming skiing over Christmas, or do they wait till the new year?
This week from this weekend will be super busy, I think. And then the week after, the first week of January, I think it's relatively quiet. So it'll be a good time to look for deals in that week, I would think. OK, just want to see you. Let's look at Roddy in full frame, should we? Yep, there he is, because it looks absolutely spectacular where you are at the moment. What are your top tips for people who are thinking about skiing? Beg your pardon? Sorry, I didn't hear that.
No problems. I just was asking what your top tips are for people who are thinking about booking a skiing holiday.
Make sure they're going to a high resort. Make sure, I'm going to sell myself, make sure they book an instructor to make the most of their time whilst they're in the Alps. And basically enjoy the time, because I think this winter is going to be an exceptional winter. OK, fantastic. And always remember to bend your knees. It's good to see you. Thanks very much indeed, Roddy. Thank you. From ice back to fire again. So people just tuning our way?
Yeah, a volcanic eruption overnight, 10 o'clock last night in Iceland, towards the southwest of the country. Authorities there saying the magma flow looks as though it's at least 100 cubic metres per second, which is pretty generous and pretty large for that sort of area. Currently, people evacuated from their homes, but an ongoing situation for authorities there.
Yeah, and we have been trying to keep an eye on what's happening as far as flights are concerned as a service to our viewers this morning, because some people will be heading to, if they're not heading to the slopes, they'll be heading to Iceland for Christmas. Only small delays at the moment is what we're looking at.
Small delays by minutes, if that. Currently, all flights still going in and out of the country.
OK, but people who are living by, they've got nearby, have got one or two problems hoping to be in for Christmas, but that's a bit... let's have a look at those pictures still, should we? That's pretty unpredictable at the moment.
It is. There are some 4,000 people that have been evacuated from a small fishing town called Grindavik, which is about 2 miles away from this fissure. It's concerning for people there in terms of not being able to return home for Christmas, yes, but worries too over what damage has been done to their homes. Of course, in Iceland, they don't get much daylight. So
at this time of year?
At this time, yes, exactly. So they're working under quite difficult conditions, the scientists, but also the emergency services there. But something they are used to. The seismic activity, however, some are saying this morning...
Look at that picture.
Yeah, extraordinary. And those fountains of lava that are sort of creeping up there overnight, they reach in excess of 200 metres tall, lighting up that sky orange, as you can see those pictures.
Amazing. I know you're going to keep an eye out for us, as you have been all morning. Excuse me. Before that, what about the weather here?
Warm memories wherever you go. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Well, next few days looking mostly unsettled and mild, but there'll be some colder spells, mainly for northern parts, quite chilly in the windy north. Now still mild in the south, though. Early rain over Wales and the southern half of England will become largely confined to the southeast by midday. Most places will then be dry with good sunny spells, but there'll be showers in the north and the west.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Stay with us, but I want to share with you, while I've got you, these pictures of Barbie.
Oh, let's see.
Have you seen it?
No, I haven't seen it.
OK, so she's won the Golden Globe nominations, most certainly. However, this is Dr. Barbie, and she's got herself in all sorts of trouble. She needs to go back to medical school, we're told, because she doesn't wear the right thing. She's got high heels on and she wears her hair down. There you go. I mean, some people will complain about anything. People in Iceland definitely got something to complain about this morning.
Yeah, they do. A huge eruption overnight, still ongoing. Extraordinary scenes of lava spewing into the night sky, lighting up the sky orange for people living there. Real concerns for people who live nearby, but also the airport that's not too far away.
It's not too far away, and if you were planning to go to the Blue Lagoon during your trip there, then maybe you'll have to think again, because that's been closed as well. It's not very far away from this 4-kilometre fissure. More on that coming up in just a moment here on Sky.
morning, everybody. It is 9 o'clock and you are very welcome to join us on The Breakfast Show for the final hour of the programme. After weeks of seismic activity, a volcano has erupted on Iceland along a fissure more than 2 miles long. We'll bring you the very latest on that. It's Tuesday, the 19th of December. Fountains of lava lighting up the morning sky. More than 4,000 people have been moved to safety so far. More than 100 people are known to have died after an earthquake in China. The president calls for an all-out search and rescue effort to save as many lives as possible. Hamas has released a new video showing 3 elderly male hostages. Their families say time is running out for them.
Israel has criticised the video as being cruel exploitation of elderly and vulnerable hostages.
TV legend Esther Rantzen says she could end her life at the Swiss clinic Dignitas. The government minister tells us Parliament must look again at assisted dying in the UK.
I think we need to go through it at the point when it's looked at by Parliament again. We'll all have the opportunity to go through it. We'll all have the opportunity to talk in places like this. It will be a big discussion and debate that the country has.
English Heritage reveals Christmas carols are being sung to the wrong tune. Get more on that a little bit later on with English Heritage. Before that, though, Ashna and Gurpreet are here. You've been keeping an eye on what's happening in Iceland all morning for us.
Yeah, currently lava is spewing from a deep crack in the southwest of the country, measuring about 3.5 kilometres long, so worrying for people there.
Yeah, and Gurpreet, a familiar face on all of the front pages this morning.
Yeah, we're going to be getting into the debate on assisted dying after Esther Rantzen, the broadcaster who's suffering from lung cancer, revealed that she's joined the Dignitas clinic in Zurich.
OK, more on that to come in just a second. I know you're going to stay with me, Ashna, and Tom is joining us as well. Hi, Tom, you can tell us a little bit more about the situation in Iceland.
Pictures, aren't they, Kay? This eruption finally happening. We've had quite a bit of warning. Back in October, there was a swarm, more than 1,000 tiny earthquakes, gave geologists in Iceland, remember these are possibly some of the world's greatest experts in volcanic eruptions because they happen a lot in Iceland, an indication that this volcanic area was likely to erupt again. An enormous crack opened up back in October, spreading all the way to the nearby village of Grindavik, and there's 4,000 people that live there, as you say, safely evacuated as they've had plenty of warning. Fortunately, it seems that this lava that's now pouring out of the fissure, now the eruption's begun, is happening away from the town. It is a good distance away. And as I understand it, although this obviously is subject to change, who knows how the eruption might proceed, that lava is currently on the other side of the watershed, taking the flow of lava, a bit like it would rainfall, away from the town, not towards it. There are other bits of infrastructure, of course. You mentioned earlier, the Blue Lagoon, that famous outdoor spa, heated by the same volcanic energy that's driving this eruption, is perilously close by. That's been shut for the duration since the warnings first came in. And but also there's a geothermal power plant that supplies power to the whole country, actually, although if it was knocked over, it wouldn't imperil the main city of Reykjavik, I understand it. However, they did take precautionary measures. Large earthworks had been put in, big dams, to try and divert the lava away to protect that power station. So again, with the warning that they've had, they're able to mitigate some of the impacts of this eruption. So for the time being, we can sit back and just admire these incredible footage of lava spewing out of this 4-kilometre long crack in the Earth's crust in Iceland, sending those plumes of lava and magma into the sky and then spilling out over the landscape.
Yeah, and as we chat to you, Tom, Ashna remains with us. It's been predicted for a month or so, hasn't it? And plans have been put in place to make sure no one's injured.
Yeah, that's right. And as Tom was saying there, people were
Stay with
evacuated.
those pictures, should we? They look amazing.
What Tom was saying, you know, people, some 4,000 of them were evacuated from their homes a month ago, so there were precautions that were taken. But look at those extraordinary pictures. At its height, some of that lava was being flung some 200 metres into the sky, lighting up the sky orange. I've just heard from a geologist in the last few minutes who was saying to me that it's every geologist's dream to be covering something like this, to be admiring footage like this. And as we currently understand it, people are safe. It's travelling in a northern direction, as Tom was alluding to. But authorities there saying the magma flow seems to be at least 100 cubic metres per second. So that would be considered a big eruption for that area at least. But good news for people there that the lava at the moment is flowing northwards and therefore not towards Grindavik, that fishing village in which people were evacuated from.
And Tom, this is, I mean, it's not the first time we've seen this sort of thing in Iceland. I well remember, as I'm sure you do as well, the volcanic ash that caused all sorts of mayhem for more than, what, a week here in the Northern Hemisphere.
Incredible disruption, and that's another reason to sit back and just enjoy these pictures while we can. This is a very different kind of eruption. This is driven by lava bubbling out of the surface. It is not an explosive volcanic eruption that we also know that Iceland is very famous for. The Grímsvötn volcano erupted in 2010. Before that, Eyjafjallajökull, which was the one you remember, Kay. That's the one that shut down airspace across most of Northern Europe and across the Atlantic for, a long period of time, causing incredible disruption and backlogs and delays to air travel. There is still the potential for those kinds of explosive eruptions on Iceland. There are several active volcanoes currently not doing very much that authorities there are keeping a close eye on. Thankfully, this particular part of the island where we're seeing this eruption is a different kind, this kind of driven by just the magma bubbling to the surface, not in this explosive fashion, which throws, when those explosive eruptions do happen, that throws that magma plus often water and steam high into the atmosphere, causing huge amounts of ash. And it's that ash that spreads, can get into the engines of aircraft and damage them, hence the flight cancellations and delays. If you want to have an earthquake, I suppose, if you want to have a volcano, this is the kind of eruption that you want to have, one that can be well predicted. You can put plans in place in advance to manage the risks that flow of magma poses, and it does not have wider implications for the rest of the world. But Iceland definitely still maintains that potential, and why the volcanoes there are so very carefully studied.
Just a bit more on the residents of that fishing town that's very near this eruption. They were only required yesterday to go back to their homes, actually, during very strict time slots. They expanded those time slots between 7 and 9 p.m. That was just to collect essential items, which left many people homeless, reports in some papers. But also businesses had only just reopened, but people there weren't allowed to walk around the town because they were worried about this being quite imminent. In the last hour, you spoke to a volcanologist who talked about the potential of these people not being able to return home anytime soon, but hopefully in time for Christmas. Here's what he told you.
The eruption seems to be slowing down. It's typical for these Icelandic fissure eruptions that they start with a big bang. They start with a lot of volume, and then they slow down. And this one is slowing down, in a few hours. So we may be seeing the end of this eruption before Christmas. And so maybe the people in the village of Grindavik will be able to move home before Christmas. Let's hope so.
Well, they certainly hope so, I'm sure. Tom, just remind us, schoolgirl geography, it's a couple of tectonic plates, isn't it, that rub together underneath Iceland?
Close, Kay. I'll give you a C+, okay?
Thank you.
So
go on, B- at least, come on.
running through the centre of the Atlantic is an area where new crust is being formed. So we've got North America and Europe being pushed apart as magma comes to the surface and pushing those two plates apart. There's a crack there, a seam where magma is being formed. Iceland sits right there. In fact, Iceland only exists because that magma from that mid-Atlantic ridge is bubbling up and forming that island over time. The volcanoes that we see there are linked to that system. But yes, it sits right on top of a very active volcanic area, most of which is hidden beneath thousands of meters, kilometers of ocean. But where Iceland sits is where that geological action comes to the surface. Other parts of the world, in the Pacific example, you have volcanic activity around areas where plates are going beneath each other, or other areas of upwelling. So you're not far wrong, but that's the reason that's driving the Icelandic phenomenon. And the whole history of Iceland is linked to volcanoes. It was formed through that way, but also the people that live there live constantly with the presence of those volcanoes in mind. And although this one, from what we're hearing so far, looks like it will be fairly benign, certainly manageable, and something people can avoid the worst impacts from, there have been eruptions in Iceland's past which have been catastrophic. One back in the, I think, 18th, I'm forgetting, it might be 16th, 17th century, which was claimed at the time to have killed half the island's population because of the amount of ash that was ejected from I think it was the Katla volcano, and that led to a failure of crops to grow, livestock died, there was starvation. Obviously, in modern times, Iceland can forecast volcanoes much more accurately and manage them better, and they're better resourced to cope with the aftermath. But there is still that looming presence of volcanic risk that sort of is constantly present for the people of Iceland and its government.
Okay, well, I might be wrong on that, but something I am right about, I think I'm right in saying, Ashna, is when we saw the volcano back in 2010 and the ash cloud that went with it, Willie Walsh, who was then in charge at British Airways, was so incensed that all the planes had been grounded for that period of a week. He actually took one of his own planes and flew through the ash cloud to prove that it was completely safe.
And he was okay?
And he was okay. He lived to tell the tale. Impact on flights of this one?
Yeah, at the moment...
That's where I was going with that.
Very good transition. At the moment, flights are still going in and out of the country, according to the country's foreign minister. Flights going certainly out of Heathrow and Gatwick today, still going ahead. A few minutes delayed, it has to be said, but at the moment, no disruption caused, unlike the 2010 eruption, which saw, as you mentioned, hundreds, thousands of flights grounded across Europe for over a week.
And the US as well, because they couldn't come back.
Affecting the Obamas, as you mentioned.
The Obamas, yeah, they were actually grounded. They were at the residence in Regent's Park there. They had to camp there. Not a bad place to camp, it has to be said, while they waited for their plane to be able to take off Air Force One. Thank you both very much indeed. I know you're going to keep an eye on that for me. Thank you for now. Before that, we'll tell you what's happening in China. At least 116 people have been killed in an earthquake in the northwest of the country. Tom has more.
In China's cold and mountainous northwest, the devastation of this earthquake is starting to become clear. Buildings are now piles of rubble. Emergency services scrambled to find survivors and were making sense of the scale of the disaster.
At 23:59 on December 18, 2023, an earthquake of 6.2 magnitude happened in Jixingsha County, Linsha Prefecture. The depth of focus of the earthquake is 10 kilometres.
People are now struggling with no power or water. Roads have been destroyed, making it more difficult for rescue workers to reach the areas most in need. China's state broadcaster has reported that President Xi Jinping has called for an all-out search and rescue effort, and 5,000 rescue workers have been sent to the region. In sub-zero temperatures, survivors have been forced to make fires outside as they struggle to stay warm. The first trickle of aid has made its way to the area, and Taiwan's president has offered their support in the disaster recovery. That recovery looks set to take some time. Tom Cheshire, Sky News.
Let's talk about the TV legend Dame Esther Rantzen on all the front pages this morning. Why? Capri, good morning.
So, Dame Esther, she's 83 years old. She's got stage 4 lung cancer.
Yeah, she has.
She's undergoing treatment for that, but she told a podcast, in her own words, that if it doesn't work, that treatment, I might buzz off to Zurich, where assisted dying is legal. She's joined Dignitas, a clinic in Switzerland. It's a not-for-profit organisation that provides assisted dying to relieve suffering. Often the people that use it are those suffering with terminal illnesses. She said that if she did decide to have an assisted death, that would put my family and friends in a difficult position because they would want to go with me, and that means that the police might prosecute them, which is opening up, once again, this debate about assisted dying. It's banned in England, Wales and Northern Ireland, carrying a maximum prison sentence of 14 years. In Scotland, it's prosecuted under murder and manslaughter laws. Campaigners for assisted dying say a change in the law would give people with terminal illnesses greater control over how they die. But opponents argue that it could threaten vulnerable people. It's a really fraught and philosophical debate, something that politicians are really struggling with. Lee Rowley, earlier on this programme, talked about it. I think we can have a listen to what he had to say.
I think it needs to be. I think we need to go through it at the point when it's looked at by Parliament again. We'll all have the opportunity to go through it. We'll all have the opportunity to talk in places like this. It will be a big discussion and debate that the country has. But there are no absolutes here. It's all about trying to find the right balance, but also recognising human life is very sacred and we should be very careful.
Well, I think clearly there's a demand from the public to have this debate. And if the public want to have a debate on an issue like this, the House of Commons is there to serve the public, and so it should be debated. Yes, it's not designed in the right way because the law is very out of date, which is why I think this debate is important. All I'm saying is you have to do these types of things very carefully and sensibly.
Can we agree that the law needs to be updated?
I think the law should be updated. If it was last written in the 1960s, we should be talking about that in the context of our modern society and thinking about what we want to do.
So politicians on both sides, they're saying that this is something that should be looked at by Parliament. It's definitely something that Dame Esther believes should be looked at by Parliament. We can have a listen to what she had to say on that podcast.
I don't want their last memories of me to be painful, because if you watch someone you love having a bad death, that memory obliterates all the happy times. And I don't want that to happen.
I'm sure that won't happen, but it's certainly started the debate again, hasn't it? Capri for now, thanks very much indeed. Do we have Joshua? Joshua with us? Joshua Rosenberg with us? No, we haven't got Joshua for now. Meantime, let's talk to Alistair, who's standing by for us in Jerusalem now to talk about an image that we've seen this morning, Alistair, with 3 elderly gentlemen who were under duress in a video that's made by Hamas. Of course, we're not going to share that video, but they have been held now since the 7th of October.
Yeah, we don't know the circumstances in which the video was filmed, but we have to make an assumption that it was done under duress, given that they are being held hostage by Hamas, and for that reason, we do not show videos of this kind, but it is out there. It is being broadcast in Israeli media and elsewhere, and it shows these 3 elderly men saying that they don't want to be in Gaza for life, they don't want to die in Gaza, and pleading that they are released sooner rather than later. Now, I think there's a couple of elements of messaging to read into this from the Hamas point of view. I think the fact that Hamas have released this video now is an attempt to put more pressure on the Israeli government to come to a new hostage deal. Hamas, although they've been under intense fighting from the Israelis for a number of months now, will, I'm sure, be aware of the domestic pressure within Israel against the Netanyahu government because people are now wanting another deal to be done, and Hamas are perhaps exploiting that position. The other thing I would note from the video is who we're looking at. We're looking at 3 elderly men. Now, elderly men have not been part of the categories of hostages released so far. That's been women and children. So it could be that Hamas is saying we are prepared to release the elderly and the vulnerable. Before that happens, Israel says that they want all the remaining women and children in Gaza to be released. I think that's 19 women, 2 children. The head of the CIA, Bill Burns, has met with the head of the Mossad, Israel's intelligence agency, and the Qatari Prime Minister in Warsaw over the last 36 hours. So negotiations, which are pretty much stalled after the breakdown in the ceasefire, are getting back up and running again. That bit is clear, but the Americans are warning not to expect anything imminently.
No, thank you. Just to clarify, we do have Joshua. We're going to chat to him in a short time. Before that, quick look at the weather.
Warm memories wherever you go. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Next few days looking mostly unsettled and mild, but there'll be some colder spells, mainly for northern parts. Quite chilly in the windy north now, still mild in the south. Early rain over Wales and the southern half of England will become largely confined to the southeast by midday. Most places will then be dry with good sunny spells, but there'll be showers in the north and the west. Wintry on the Scottish hills. It's going to be a bit cooler for most, with a cold wind bringing coastal gales to the north. But the far south looks quite mild.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Now, do you recognise this festive tune? That is, of course, While Shepherds Watch Their Flock by Night, sung to what English Heritage says is the correct tune. Researchers say that many of our favourite carols were standardised during the 19th century and their original music was lost. Yeah, to me, that is Ilkley Mór Bartat, isn't it? It is. It is. If you know the song, that's exactly what that is. Coming up after Dame Esther Ranson's comments on joining Dignitas, should the law be changed around assisted dying in the UK? We'll hear from a legal expert after the break.
5 of us have made it out of the car.
Welcome to Backstage, the film and TV podcast.
A lot of the front pages this morning reflecting on the news that Dame Esther Ranson, who is suffering from stage 4 lung cancer, says that she would consider going to Dignitas in Switzerland to end her own life because she can't do that here within the bounds of the law. Joshua Rosenberg, our legal commentator, is with us now. Hi, Joshua. Not only
Hello,
that,
good morning,
if
Kay.
one of her family went with her, they could face up to 14 years in jail.
Well, that's what she says, but it all depends on what that member of the family did. What the law in England and Wales says is that you commit an offence if you do an act capable of encouraging or assisting the suicide or attempted suicide of another person, and your act was intended to encourage or assist suicide or an attempt at suicide. So if you simply travel with the person, but you're not helping them in any way because they're perfectly capable of traveling on their own, you haven't helped them to make the arrangements, you're just going along for the ride, as it were, I don't think that's a criminal offence.
And therein is another issue, because some people feel that they need to go, perhaps, to Dignitas before they would want to, because they need to be able-bodied to make the journey.
That's a perfectly fair point, and that's obviously why there are people pressing for a change in the law, and you've been debating whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. It's not an offence, obviously, to take your own life, but as the law stands, it is an offence if you do what I've just said, you do something capable of encouraging or assisting suicide, which is intended to. But of course, the Crown Prosecution Service, and all these prosecutions have to be approved personally by the head of the Crown Prosecution Service, the Director of Public Prosecutions. The Crown Prosecution Service issued guidelines in 2010. These were updated in 2014, so fairly recently, in which they explain the circumstances in which they will prosecute and the circumstances in which they won't prosecute. And it's fair to say that they prosecute in a relatively small number of cases, and these are very serious cases.
Yeah, I'm not sure how aware you are of the situation on the Isle of Man at the moment, getting closer to legalising assisted dying, potentially, for those who are terminally ill but mentally competent. I wonder if the British Parliament the UK Parliament may look at that.
Certainly, there is a committee of MPs looking at this issue at the moment, the Health Committee, and it will publish its report, and maybe that will be debated. There have been debates in the past. There have been a lot of people campaigning for a change in the law. It's something that Parliament should review from time to time. There are arguments in favour, there are arguments against. There are countries that have done this, and there are countries that have not.
It's what, since the 1960s, since this law was in place? How often do we tend to look at our laws?
Well, as I say, although the Suicide Act was passed in 1961, it was updated in 2010, and that was when the new guidance was issued, and the guidance was updated in the view of a case that was decided by the courts in 2014. So it is under review. But it's fair to say that in terms of the basis of the law, it hasn't significantly been changed since suicide itself was decriminalised.
Yeah. So just to clarify, that is as a result of this sort of situation that Dame Esther has found herself in?
It's certainly as a result of people campaigning and taking their campaigns to the courts. And in summary, what the courts have said is that although this is something the courts could deal with, they think it's best left to Parliament. They don't want to change the law to in some way make assisted suicide lawful in England and Wales. They say that this is something best left to Parliament. It's difficult for governments. They don't want to take sides on this. That's why people, like I think Dame Esther Ranson, are calling for a free vote by MPs. But I think many people would say that a law like this needs to be considered by Parliament, and if any amendment is to be made, that should be a matter for Parliament.
OK, we'll leave it there. Thanks very much indeed for the clarification. Thank you. Still to come, taking you back up to Iceland, where that volcano that had been threatening to erupt for more than a month finally did it. About 10 o'clock last night. Pretty spectacular it was too. Continuing coverage on Sky. Ashna is with us. Latest pictures, as we can see, from Iceland. What's happening? Breaking news?
Breaking news that currently the Icelandic Met Office are meeting with the country's civil defence over reports of what's going on currently right now. I assume to get a sort of snapshot of the current situation. They know that this fissure is currently growing in size. It's estimated to be about 4 kilometres long now. So that's in the past 3 hours or so, it's grown by half a kilometre. They're concerned about which direction it's going towards. At the moment, it's creeping further north and away from the town that we've been talking about this morning. So that sort of news in the last few minutes that they're currently having that meeting.
So tell me who they are. Who are these people that are meeting?
They are meeting the Icelandic Met Office, meeting with the civil defence. So those emergency services, but also those responsible for dishing out resources for where best to help people who might be concerned about this spreading.
Okay. So for people just tuning our way, it is the same time in Iceland as it is here, but of course they have, most 22, 23 hours of darkness, don't they, at this time of year, making for these absolutely spectacular pictures. But on a human level, a lot of people have had to leave their homes.
Yeah, some 3,800 people in a local village that's about 2 miles away from this eruption had to evacuate their homes in sort of late October, early November. It was only yesterday that authorities said to those residents, you might be able to be home in time for Christmas if nothing happens. And then, you know, shock, horror, this happens last night at 10:30. In recent days, they have been allowed to go home between the hours of 7 a.m. and 9 p.m, with some businesses being open. But that was just to collect a few belongings. Businesses were open for some of those hours, but crucially, no one was allowed to stay overnight and no one was allowed to walk around that town. I guess for this reason, they were concerned that seismic activity was growing over the past few days. Of course, it's something the region, but also specifically the country, are very used to. But the concern is, where does this lava go and how long will it be there for?
It's a great question. Keep an eye on it for us if you would. Thanks very much indeed. Thank you. Really impressive images reaching us from Iceland, and we are being told that flights being delayed just a little bit. Nothing to worry about at this stage. This activity not far away from the airport, but we're told nothing to worry about at this stage. I know many of you will be thinking about going to Iceland, already planning going to Iceland for Christmas. The activity likely to continue on for some time. Ashna's on it for you, and she'll update you in a little while. Meantime, let me introduce you to Peter Egan, actor and animal rights activist. Good to see you. Thanks very much indeed. And there's a reindeer behind you. And that is because a British company selling reindeer hunting trips.
Yes,
what on earth is that about?
It's horrible, isn't it? I mean, it is absolutely shocking. There are lots of British companies that sell trophy hunting things throughout the world, in Africa and places like that. Yeah. So, but I mean, at this time of the year, at a time of peace and goodwill on earth for everyone, I know it's a bit of a cliche, even contemplate, and look at this beautiful, beautiful creature, to contemplate the fact that there is a British company that is selling hunting trips to those psychopathic amateurs that go out on these hunting trips and don't actually do the job very, very well. Very often they shoot the poor deer and they don't kill it instantly. It's an absolutely appalling hobby for psychopaths. And I think it's particularly upsetting to see this happen at a time when children are encouraged to love Santa and the reindeers, and it's really upsetting.
My first reindeer for the very first time at a farm shop the other day, and I didn't realise that their horns are quite soft and fairy.
Absolutely, yes, yes. And I think they want to shoot the reindeer when they've lost that kind of green furriness on their horns, and it's just dreadful, isn't it? I mean,
what sort of people do that?
Well, I don't understand how anyone can take pleasure out of killing a beautiful creature. I do personally believe that it is the occupation of psychopaths, and they do remind me so much of serial killers, you know, who do the most appalling things to human beings, and then they like to keep a little trophy, a trinket, to remind them of the dreadful pleasure they got from destroying beauty.
What about those that are misguided and just think, oh, I'm not quite sure, I just thought it was probably quite a good idea at the time? I mean, what advice would you give to people who...
I mean, I don't think that many that people are misguided about booking a holiday that is going to involve them taking a high-powered rifle with them to another country. The advice I would give to anyone who is thinking about doing it just off the cuff is develop and listen to your compassion, because it's the most disgusting thing you can do.
Defenders would say that Norway has a tradition of hunting, has strict controls on it, and the number of animals hunted is subject to strict quotas.
Yeah. Well, that's okay. I mean, they have introduced a problem in these countries because they've taken the natural predator, the wolf, out of the game. So they are forced to kind of have a culling system. So if you're going to have a culling system, then do it properly. Have an expert marksman who is actually going to do it, have a clean kill, rather than an amateur who is pretending to be a hunter, going out and doing the job very badly, in my opinion.
We did try and reach out to the company. It is a British company. We asked them for their comments. They're called Henry Ramsey and Waters. They've now taken it off their website. We can't find it anymore. We did reach out to them to ask them if they would like to offer a comment. We haven't heard back from them as yet. What would you like to say to them?
I would like to say find a different way of earning money. Find a more compassionate, a more humane way of earning money. Do wonderful tours that allow people to enjoy shooting wildlife with cameras.
Exactly that. Exactly. If you're going to shoot an animal, use a camera.
Use a camera, absolutely, yeah.
Good to see you. Thanks, Peter. Thanks
That's so kind of you, Kay.
What are you up to at the moment?
I've just finished a series called True Love. Starts on Channel 4 on January the 3rd.
Fantastic.
Wonderful series, great cast.
Lovely. We look forward to seeing it. Thanks very much indeed. Merry Christmas.
Thank you, and you too.
Thanks very much. Meantime, service being held today to celebrate the life of the former Chancellor, the wonderful Alistair Darling. Connor standing by for us there this morning. The great and the good will be turning out later on, I'm sure, Connor.
Yeah, figures from across the political spectrum arriving here within the next hour or so, Kay, including the former Prime Minister Tony Blair, the former Prime Minister Gordon Brown and the current First Minister of Scotland, Humza Yousaf, among many others, to pay their final respects to the former Chancellor, Alistair Darling, who died last month at the age of 70 after battling cancer for a number of months. Let's remember, Alistair Darling, a well-respected figure, political figure across many decades here in the UK. Best known as well for steering the country through the financial crisis in 2008 and clearly heading up the Better Together campaign here in Scotland during the independence referendum of 2014. The service is due to get underway at 11 o'clock this morning. There will be eulogies from Alistair Darling's sons, and then the memorial service will finish with a Piper's Lament.
OK. Very much missed by so many people. Thank you very much. Thank you. Next, we'll be speaking to an historian about how we should be singing Christmas carols.
Fly Emirates, fly better. Fly Emirates, fly better.
We're going to be talking carols with Dr. Michael Carter, English Heritage's Senior Properties Historian. Good morning.
Good morning.
To you. I want to give you an example, first of all, of what we're talking about. This is how you should sing a song, and this is how we actually sing it. Here we go. That is Ilkley Mór Bartas any day of the week.
It certainly is. It's a tune called Cranbrook. It was written in the 1790s.
Wow.
And it has been sung. The tune's been used to sing while Shepherd's watched, well, since the early 19th century.
So we're singing them wrong all this time?
Not really. It speaks to what carols are. They're very, very pliable, and they speak to evolving Christmas traditions. And that goes right back to the dawn of carolling in the 14th century.
14th century?
Indeed,
so
yeah.
tell me the history to carols. What was...
Well, they're songs. They're happy, popular songs. Actually, I said happy, some of them aren't.
Some of them not. Good
you know, but
looked
they
out.
started off as not just being a song, but accompanied by a dance.
Oh.
And I have to be like a bit of an academic pedant here. Carols are properly defined by their structure and not their subject matter.
Is that right?
And that's because they were danced to. Now, ever since the medieval origin of carols, they've had a very strong association with Christmas. About 500 carols survived from the Middle Ages, and half of them, one way or another, have Christmas as their subject matter.
Well, Eleanor has dug one out for me, and I said, that's not a carol. And she said, well, why don't you ask the doctor and see what he says? So have we got it? I don't want to give it away. Have we got it? We're going to find that one for you, and we'll bring it to you. Is it here? Here we go.
On Christmas Day, I saw 3 ships come sailing. On Christmas Day in the morning.
Any song sung at Christmas a carol. And it's really evolving to the extent that Fairy Tale of New York has been called by some people a Christmas carol. And that's fine with me. You know, that carols and carolling has evolved over the centuries.
So can we call this a carol or not?
Yeah, you can call it a carol.
Oh, that's irritating, because she'll be so smug now.
Well, it can, but it's not technically a carol. In fact...
Oh, there you go, so I win.
In fact, almost all the songs we sing at Christmas aren't technically carols, but that doesn't matter. They're songs we sing at Christmas, and calling songs sung at Christmas carols, regardless of their pedantic academic structure, it goes right back to the 15th century. That association between a dance and a song was broken in the late Middle Ages, but the singing of song at Christmas, of carolling, survived reformations of religion and manners, and it's still a vibrant, living tradition. As we heard with, While Shepherds Watched, now that was the only carol or hymn in the Anglican hymnal for almost all the 18th century with an association at Christmas. And it was sung to a bewildering array of tunes, not just Cranbrook, the Wild Shepherd, the Ilkley Mór tune. And that wasn't the only one which has had a shifting melody.
OK, so I went caroling at the Albert Hall on Sunday, and we sang Hark the Herald Angels Sing. Now, that's definitely a carol.
Well, it's a song for Christmas.
What about Good King Wenceslas? I don't know, which one?
Right, now Good King Wenceslas is fascinating. The tune
Let's do Hark the Herald first.
OK.
Wait for the organ. Right.
It's a bit dull.
Mendelssohn.
Oh, is that the
Songs
problem?
at Christmas. Now,
Yeah.
do you remember going to Mass on Easter Sunday
I most
morning
certainly do.
and singing the hymn "Christ our Lord is risen today"?
Oh,
that
there
was
you
the
go.
melody
It
that
is.
was originally sung to. Hark the Herald Angels.
Wow, I didn't know
So,
that.
and another one that's had a melody change is not one of my favourites, "O Little Town of Bethlehem."
Love that.
But that's had a shift in melody as well.
You see, I wouldn't have thought that was a carol either, particularly.
Well, it's just, you know, it's a hymn, it's a song sung at Christmas.
Yes,
You know?
okay.
I mean, me being a medieval nerd, my favourite carols are actually the medieval ones, and there's some gorgeous
Good King
English...
Wenceslas, do you like?
Ah, right. Oh, sorry. Let's go to back.
Have we got
I just
that?
got carried away, didn't I?
Have we got... No, we
Well,
haven't
Good
got it.
King
If you'd like to
Wenceslas.
sing it, feel
I would
free.
not want to make anybody's ears bleed and spoil their Christmas. You know, we're all having such a good time. Let me not get in the way with it. Good King Wenceslas, that has the tune of a carol, but not a Christmas carol.
No.
There are carols on loads of subjects. Now, the tune of Good King Wenceslas, it was first published in 1582 up in Scandinavia in a book called Pia Cantiones. And it is a tune associated with a Eastertide carol. And it was applied, words were applied to it in the mid-19th century about Wenceslas and reminding people of their Christian duties of charity and care for the poor at Christmastide, and indeed all the time.
Sure. What about this one, God Rest You Merry Gentlemen? So we did sing this as well at the weekend.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. I'm not quite, there's a lot of debate about quite how old this one is. I think it's certainly 17th century. It might be a bit older, but again, it's just a song sung at Christmas, but which we call a carol, which is absolutely fine by me.
Yeah, and one of the songs that we finished off with at the Albert Hall was Rocking Around the Christmas Tree. How are you feeling about that one?
Well, as I said, Christmas has constantly evolved.
Yeah.
The Christmas we enjoy today is largely an invention of the 19th century, and it's evolved ever since. And you know what? The singing of carols in the Royal Albert Hall, outside of church, is maintaining a tradition that goes right back to the Middle Ages. There was no place in the medieval liturgy for the singing of carols, and they would have been sung in more secular spaces. And you know what? Of people having a great time.
Oh, people were so... honestly, thousands and thousands of people having an absolute ball. Coaches from all over the country. With it. It was amazing. 12 Days of Christmas.
Ah, right. Now, that's one that's a load of absolute nonsense has been written about. It's a great song. Some people have tried to claim that it is a reflection of Roman Catholic belief when Catholicism was illegal in England between the 16th and late 18th century. In fact, it's a little rubbish. It's just a song about the days of Christmas, and the gifts have no significance whatsoever. But very important message with it. You would sing Christmas carols throughout the 12 days. Now, we've been hearing them on the airwaves now for weeks, haven't we?
That's true.
And I'll bet you we do not hear another one on the airwaves after Boxing Day afternoon or something.
As opposed to going through to the 6th.
All the way through to the 6th, and indeed beyond.
Oh.
You know, the season of Christmas extends well into January to what's called the Octave of the Epiphany, and actually only ends at Candlemas on the 2nd of February, and that indeed has its own carol.
Doctor, we must leave it there, but if you, I have to say that the crowd participation at the Albert Hall with the 12 Days of Christmas was magical. Already want to go and do it again. It was only on Sunday. Have a sensational Christmas.
You too.
Thank you for
Pleasure.
taking the time, Doctor. Really appreciate it. Thank you. I just want to look at the latest pictures from Iceland. Here we go. My goodness me, pretty dramatic stuff, wasn't it? This is what happened around about 10 o'clock last night when there was what had been promised for, threatened for weeks, shall we say. There was a volcano that finally erupted after about a month or so. Thankfully, most humans out of the way, Ashna.
Yeah, that's right. Some 3,000 to 4,000 residents of a local town evacuated about a month ago. But that, dramatic picture there of that lava, orange lava set against that night sky, creating some quite spectacular imagery in terms of how long this is going to go on for. We know that this morning the Coast Guard over there in Iceland has sent across a helicopter filled with scientists in it. One of those scientists has been speaking to local media. He's called Magnus Gudmundsson. He has said to local media it could be over a week that this lasts, or could be quite a bit longer. He also estimated that crack in the earth had seen twice as much lava spewed than the entire month-long eruption in the peninsula this summer. So it's dramatic even on their scale. They're used to seeing activity like this brewing, and it has been brewing for quite a few weeks now. Certainly that's the reason why that town was evacuated, and no sign of them getting back into their homes or checking on their belongings, certainly up until Christmas at least.
And just the breaking news that you brought to us quickly.
Yeah, that's right. The Icelandic Met Office are currently meeting with government officials, those from the Civil Defence Service, to assess.
Updating throughout the day, I'm sure, for now. Thank you. Quick look at the weather here.
Warm memories wherever you go. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Next few days looking mostly unsettled and mild, but there'll be some colder spells, mainly for northern parts, quite chilly in the windy north, still mild in the south. Early rain over Wales and the southern half of England will become largely confined to the southeast by midday, and haven't brought me brolly. Most places will then be dry with good sunny spells, but there'll be showers in the north and the west. Wintry on the Scottish hills.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
That's it from your breakfast team this morning. Coming up, we will be updating you most certainly on what has been happening in Iceland overnight. As I said, most people have been evacuated from the area. Pretty spectacular imagery, though, so we'll have the very latest on that for you. And also, Dame Esther is on the front page of many of your papers this morning. She has grade 4, stage 4 lung cancer. What's she going to do next? Stay tuned.
Hello, you're watching Sky News Today with me, Jane Sacker. It's 10 o'clock. These are the headlines. More than 100 people have been killed in an earthquake in China, with rescuers battling minus 15-degree temperatures to save people trapped below the rubble. A volcano erupts in Iceland following weeks of intense earthquakes. We'll bring you the latest update amid concerns that lava could be heading for a nearby town. Running out of time to save them. The warning from an Israeli kibbutz after 3 of its citizens appeared in a new hostage video released by Hamas. And the government is expected to release guidance on how to support transgender students. But some schools say they'll make their own policy. Hello, good morning. More than 100 people have been killed in China's worst earthquake in 13 years. Thousands of rescue workers have been sent to help pull people from the rubble, but efforts are being hampered by temperatures as low as minus 15